Good afternoon, good evening, good night, depending on where it is you're watching us from. Welcome everybody once again to Space Fam here on OPT Telescope's Clear Skies Network. If you're not watching this on Clear Skies Network, twitch.tv/Clear Skies Network. Join us there. Make sure you subscribe because that's where a lot of the conversation is really happening. Although it goes on across all the platforms, Facebook, Twitter, everywhere. So welcome wherever you're watching from tonight. We have a great show. We're going to have a couple drop-in guests as well this evening, but we're going to be kind of all over everything from STEM to like videographer to we got authors. Well, an author, at least one author. I feel like Eddie's probably working on a book he's not talked about yet. And then we got a couple wonderful people working for some of the companies that are going to take us to the moon, which is awesome. Take us back to the moon, I should say. And also, hopefully, take me to space. So we're really excited about tonight. So I want to go around the horn, let everybody introduce themselves. Mel, I'm going to start with you. Give us an introduction of who you are, your very cool background, your story of kind of starting later in life like I did. That's one of the ways that we kind of got connected. Yep. And also what you do now.
So my background was in audio engineering. I was touring with bands. I was a tour manager and a merch girl. And then I started doing audio. And then eventually, like 10 years in, I'm like, I just couldn't make it work. I couldn't break into the industry. Eventually, then I became a nanny. So then I was a nanny for a long time. And then at some point, I just needed to change something. And I figured I could try to go to engineering school. And I did. And I got into UW in Seattle. And then somehow I got an internship with NASA. So I went to Huntsville in the summer of 2017, the year before I graduated. And then I graduated in 2018 and I got hired by Virgin Orbit. And then, so I had to move to Southern California. No offense to anyone from down there. I can't handle the climate. It is too hot all the time. It never stops. It never stops being hot. Even in winter, it's like spring, like a warm spring day. And then,
you're killing me because we just had snow like a month ago. It was 91 day, dropped 60 degrees. It was 30 degrees in snow. I just crack up when I hear that. Yeah, it's beautiful here right now.
Because I lived in Denver for almost a year as well, that one time. And then, so I remember living there and it was not that drastic, but it was, it was like April or like early May. And I get up in the morning and it was like a foot of snow and by noon it was gone and it was 65 degrees and I was sweating because I start sweating at 65 degrees because it's warm. So, yeah.
Seriously. I have my own personal air conditioner in my room that stays at about 68 degrees, and I'm not kidding. It is cold outside right now to most people. I just went in a t-shirt and shorts to the liquor store, and my AC is still on full blast, so that way whenever I get done in here, and I'll be sweaty, well, because of this and because it's warmer to me, even though the window's open, I will go back in my room and be like, finally, relief.
Yes.
Seriously, I can't stand it. Cannot stand the heat. I don't know. That's why I don't go to, like, Lee, you saw me. I was a gooey mess. I'm like, get me out of here. I love you guys, but I don't like you that much.
Where were you?
It was gross.
Love you, brother.
No, so, and I do vibration and dynamics and shock stuff. Mostly high frequency dynamics now. Not so much low frequency dynamics. Maybe I'll get into that someday, but yeah, shock and vibe for rockets apparently now.
Most stellar. Well, thank you for joining the show tonight. I hear somebody laughing and was possibly saying something. Go ahead. Nope, just enjoying it. Fair enough. All right, John Reed, we're going to go to you. You do a multitude of things. One is being a prolific author. Actually, I've got... Hold on. Let me not get that one. Let me go to my box here. Here's one of his mini books. 50 Things to See on the Moon. I've actually got the activity workbook next to me, and I have a few other ones. He just recently retconned one of his books and made me the DJ on Mars after my interview with Elon Musk and sent that to me, so that was super cool. So John, tell us a little bit about the cool things you do, where you're at, and like all the stuff that you love.
Yeah, so this is a new beginning for me too. So I have a background in corporate finance. So I graduated and moved to San Francisco and got one of those fancy, insanely boring jobs. But at the same time, I started volunteering with NASA's Night Sky Network with one of the astronomy clubs in the Bay Area. And almost every night I was out with a telescope teaching kids about the night sky. And eventually I just wrote it all down into a book, 50 Things to See with a Small Telescope. And it was successful enough and it gave me enough drive that in 2016, I quit my job, moved to Canada where I could afford to do an astrophysics degree, completed the degree in 4 years, and that was basically just 4 months ago. So throughout the degree, I was writing. I've now written 9 books, and or published 9 books. Sorry, there's about 5 books in the works right now, and it's just been an exciting life change. And I can't wait to see where this astrophysics degree takes me and what's next.
Love, love, love it. So next up, one of our special guests tonight. He was not on the the promo photo, but the reason why I wanted to have him on tonight is because Lee created an incredible project called Passage that I am involved in, and we were super stoked. We started the live stream on Thursday night somewhere around $7,700, and by the time we ended, we were at $9200. So more than $1,500 in just a couple of hours. What was supposed to be an hour live stream lasted 3.5 hours. It was that cool. So excited to have him on just so he can talk to everyone a bit about this. Would love to see us hit 10, 11,000 by the end of the weekend. And this is a totally new audience than what watched on Thursday. So Lee, tell us a little bit about what you're doing, why you're doing it, the inspiration behind it, and all the cool things that have been going on with it recently.
Yeah, awesome. I'm glad to be here again, Ron, as always. And what Ron is referring to is a project called Passage that I'm working on with just under 30 science communicators and researchers, people actively in the space community and in all areas of STEM, really. We are working to raise $50,000 to bring supplies, lab equipment, technology to Latin America's most underprivileged schools. So we have 10 confirmed schools throughout the Caribbean and South America. And my background is in filmmaking, and I'm a pilot as well, with also a little bit of astronomy. I used to work at a planetarium, volunteered at an observatory, did stuff with NASA's Night Sky Network, as you did, John. So that's pretty cool that you ended up writing a book because of that. So just a whole lot of stuff that I like and I want to use to leverage people that need it as well. So generously and graciously, all these science communicators came together. We have an amazing team to raise this money. We're about to hit $10,000. We're only 250 away. And I'm going to be flying solo so that we can carry all these supplies in late 2021 throughout the Caribbean and South America, delivering these supplies, making a documentary about the entire thing, and raising awareness for these schools, because Latin America is a place where education is declining rapidly. There are things going on that can be solved if there's a little bit of investment in education, especially now with COVID-19, a shortage of doctors, a shortage of medical staff. People are suffering way more than most parts of the world. So it's important to get kids excited, get them the opportunity. And Passage is, it stands for Providing Aid in Science for South America's General Education. So it's a really exciting project, a lot of exciting stuff planned. I know Ron has done a lot so far with helping us get the word out. So thanks, Ron, for having me on and for, being a part of this amazing project.
I think many of us have said anything you want to do, we're behind it, and I love whenever you're like, I can't wait to tell you. So Lee vague booked me via WhatsApp for about a month or two, and I loved it because I do that to people. I'm notorious for that, but I never let anybody down. It's always worth the wait. But I love what you're doing, Lee. Obviously, the live stream that we did was extremely successful. We did that last Thursday.
So much fun.
Yeah, it was it was only supposed to be about an hour long, and we went about 3.5 hours because the conversation got so deep. We had some special guests, and one of those special guests is our next guest, and it's perfect for me to go to Eddie next because this is something that Eddie this is Eddie's work. This is what he does. So, Eddie, tell us what you do, how you got into it, a little bit of your story, because it's not, again, for you, this wasn't something that out of the gate you were going to do, and now you do such incredible work. So, hit us, man.
Thank you. I do not have a science background at all. Business management is my game. And I worked at one of the largest law firms in the world for about 17 years before coming to NASA in 2001. And I came in on the business side. However, I quickly took a look at the population of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory where I was working. And I thought, you know what, we need more diversity here. So I made it a quest of mine, to figure out how can I do that? So obviously through the education office, through helping our next generation of learners and space enthusiasts by helping them with their soft skills, mentoring. I mentor dozens and dozens of students at a time, and I try to teach them to be comfortable being uncomfortable, learning how to network, learning those soft skills, mastering your elevator pitch. When you go to a national career fair, how do you manage that, and how do you stand out from the rest? So 20 years at NASA. I worked at NASA headquarters off and on for about 4 years or so. And in 2018, I met the woman of my dreams. We were supposed to have this big wedding in California. Yes, I'm from Southern California. But now I live in DC. And we actually had a quote unquote virtual Zoom wedding. We figured out how to do this. And COVID would not stop love. So now I live on the East Coast, and I'm working at, as I said, NASA Goddard. And I'm just loving what I do. And again, showing students opportunities and mentoring and working with these chapters in these regions from Latinx, African American, Native American, and so on and so forth. So I really enjoy what I do. It's a passion of mine. And Ron, thank you for having me on the show.
Sorry, just got a message from the commander of everything OPT Telescopes. He's actually going to drop in a little bit and say hi, Dustin Gibson, who's the CEO there. There's some pretty big announcements this week. So if you all watched the birthday live stream that I had, with like Neil deGrasse Tyson Cole, Abigail Bolenbach, Bianca Fellow, hopefully I say her name right, and so many other amazing people that hopped on. We had 10 total guests that night. Skyless, if you don't follow her on Twitch, you should. She's one of the top, if not the top science communicator on Twitch. He gave me a telescope for my birthday that was still in development, and they released a video on it this week. And he actually worked with one of the top astronomy science communicators in the world to build this thing. So I was going to show the video a little bit later anyway, so I'm really excited. So it looks like Dustin's going to join us in a little bit, but before we do that, let's go to somebody that this was random how we ended up becoming friends, and I love the fact that we could end up connecting, that we had a mutual friend, and we're very excited for Nastia because she just started working at NASA this week, but we were last year at Space Fest, and she's like, yeah, Ron, you should come over and hang out. It was her, Daniel, who was the Russian astronaut that was there? There was a Russian astronaut. I can't remember his name. He was very cool. I think like Ron Guerin stopped by, and of course Anna.
Ron stopped by.
Yeah, and your wife. Yeah, exactly. And Ron's wonderful. If you don't know Ron Guerin, he does amazing things in the world since he's become an astronaut. He wrote an incredible book called The Orbital, I think it was The Orbital Perspective. I tried to get them, because there's the Orbital Perspective, then there's The Overview Effect by Frank, and he works closely with Frank White too. He works with Leland Melvin and Anusha Ansari and Nicole Stott on a bunch of amazing stuff. He's one of the coolest astronauts out there. He was actually my first astronaut friend on Facebook. He's such a great guy. And Anna was there, Daniel's recent wife, by the way. Congratulations. We were talking about it earlier. He's getting ready to go grab her and bring them home. So we've got a lot of recent exciting things for almost everybody on here, and that's one of the reasons that I love tonight's show too. It's been a good year for a lot of people, and not the best year. So Daniel, tell us all about your story, the cool stuff you did, your previous job, and what you do now.
Previous job is not enough jobs. I started at the patent office after graduating from Purdue in aerospace engineering. Patent office was fun, but not hands-on enough. So I went to NASA Johnson Space Center, became a flight controller for a number of years. Then when shuttle was on its way out, became a space shuttle engineer in mechanical systems, focused on everything that moved except main propulsion. So whether it was external tank doors or payload bay doors, and that taught me everything I needed to know about mechanisms at the time. After that, space was a little bit on a hiatus. So I went and did helicopters and aircraft at Boeing until SpaceX was launching like crazy. So I became a mission integrator and mission manager there, starting with the early missions and then moving through Dragon. Did rideshare at Spaceflight, did small sats at Rocket Lab, did Stratocraft at Worldview, and now I am doing lunar landers at Astrobotic. So I'm the mission director for Griffin Mission 1, taking the Viper rover for NASA to the moon in late 2023 to the South Pole, which is super exciting. So crazy career. Would love to do wildlife things and horticulture after all the moon stuff is done, or maybe bring it thereafter, but stay varied, stay interesting.
I think that's one of the very, very, very cool things about people that are in the science, specifically the space community, is that space, kind of encapsulates everything, right? If we find, so let me back up. When I was younger, the love of my life, the thing I wanted to do with science was paleontology. Thank you, Michael Crichton and Jurassic Park. Like, I was just so much fell in love with it. And the thing is that I did an interview not too long ago with Mike Mongo, and we were talking about, what happens if we find extinct life on Mars? Does that make somebody that goes there that searches and looks at this extinct life? Will that be an astropaleontologist? And if so, how could you possibly have a cooler job title than that? I mean, mine currently for Space Foundation Discovery Center is Chief Curiosity Correspondent. That one's pretty awesome. But what if I could say on my resume, I used to be the Chief Curiosity Correspondent for the Space Foundation Discovery Center, and now I'm a Martian astropaleontologist. Just saying. So there's a lot of cool things that are out there, and it's always exciting that we're constantly adding new ones. An astrobiologist was something that was weird to hear, and now it's something that's much more prevalent. And you know what? I think there's somebody that's waiting to do a drop-in right now. That's an astrobiologist. I wonder if he has anything interesting to say. Maybe he brought his beard with him. Graham, what's going on?
What's rocking? Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you.
Yep. All right. It's always good to check the microphone status. Love you all. Great things. Eddie, so cool. Yes, it's great to have more perspective, more voices. The Space Fam is huge, but in places of hiring, in places of power, we definitely need more perspective, more voices, more backgrounds. We need more diversity throughout NASA and throughout all that we're doing in space exploration, space science, and astrobiology. I think my son even agrees. You can hear him right now yelling behind me. That's my.
What's up, Nolan?
You gotta shout out, Nolan.
Well, we're glad to have you on. I know you said you want to pop in and you just want to do a random drop. You're more than welcome to stay as long as you want to.
I don't know what I'll say and what I'll do when I drop in, but here's one fun thing for you. We are not all stardust. It's a beautiful thought that we are stardust, but we're not. We are other things. Parts of your body were formed during the Big Bang. Long before any stars existed, you have hydrogen atoms inside of you right now that were formed when our universe started. And you have some atoms inside of your body right now that are very young compared to the ages of stars. You have carbon atoms inside of you that formed from nitrogen in our atmosphere when cosmic rays bombarded that nitrogen. You also have carbon atoms inside of your body, all of us do right now, that formed during the very tragic events of Hiroshima and Nagasaki when nuclear bombs exploded. We call it bomb carbon. And so I recommend looking it up. It's a very cool thing to learn about. Like I said, it's also tragic. We lost at least 200,000 lives that we know of during those bomb blasts. And yet all of us share the heritage from those nuclear explosions.
I mean, listen, how cool is that? And I love that too. That's one of the things that energy, it's not destroyed, it just changes different forms. So that means everything in you is 13.8 billion years old. And that is, honestly, I think that's even cooler. And, one of my favorite ones from Neil deGrasse Tyson is, he says, what's the greatest, it's one of his most popular videos on YouTube. And it says, I'm trying to think of exactly how he says, it's like, what's the greatest fact that I know? It's that all of us, each and every one of us, are connected to each other. Hold on, let me make sure I get it right. To each other biologically, to the Earth chemically, and to the rest of the universe atomically. And I may say that just a little bit wrong, but it's amazing. And I think that's one of the things too. And don't want to go down the road of it because everybody has different beliefs and stuff, but that's one of the reasons that I'm always like, as exciting as that is, I don't really need anything more than the amazingness that the universe shows us. Of course, there's plenty of great and wonderful things to faith. Even Carl Sagan has talked about it's part of our history, it's part of our art, and it is a big piece of it. Actually, once I lost my faith, I had no real desire for it anymore, is when I really started traveling the world and was fascinated by it. I can't wait to go to Jerusalem, and Lee and I have talked about this before, to go see our buddy Kavi and go check out that part of the world, like where these three major religions kind of combine in this one place, in this one piece. I loved walking around the Vatican, although it kind of shows you just how much they stole through the centuries. But I mean, there's just a lot of really cool things out there. Nepal in particular was beautiful to me, and it made me more of an explorer once I realized how we were all connected. Without, some people say that that's how they're connected to things, but You don't have to have that. We're connected in other ways as well that I hope that we can all know, love, and experience. And I love the fact that you brought that up, Graham. And that's kind of what brings us all together. There's so many people from so many different backgrounds. There's people that started young. There's people that started later in life. And, Lee is somebody that will make you just absolutely jealous of all the stuff he did before he graduated college, just recently. And, just barely out of college now, he's got this really cool thing going on. What was that, Lee?
Yeah, last week I graduated college.
So, and yep.
Thank you.
Bunch of late starters in here.
Not him.
Yeah,
Like he already knew how to fly and everything.
Yeah, it's a fun time.
Sorry, I didn't want to. Yeah, exactly. Snipe said the most astounding fact. I have to do different impersonations. So, people, this is a big thing the other night. I will do Carl Sagan and Neil deGrasse Tyson impersonations if you donate to Passage. So Snyder did it the other night, and I had to do one for him. So we appreciate all that you all want to throw in there. So let's dive into some topics. We're already about half an hour in, which I love whenever just the opening takes that much time because the people that are on have so many cool things to say and share. And so let's talk a little bit about not just Blue Origin, Astrobiotic are both kind of looking at the moon now. And what?
No astrobiotic. No astrobiotic. We're not an astrobiology company, although I'm sure we'd love to do that.
Astrobotic, I'm sorry. My fault. I didn't mean to say it wrong. I think that because there's somebody else that I know too that, like Sunny, who was on a few weeks ago, has Astrobotics with an X. And so, like, there's a couple of different ones. So my apologies, Lon. Thank you for fixing that. So hopefully John's not watching this. But I definitely want to talk a little bit about this. This is a really exciting time. We're going back to the moon. We're looking at, and this is something that Daniel and I have talked about. You're going to be able to have something that you can send to the moon with a lot of these different organizations, and we've talked about that too. So this is super cool. All these things that are happening. So Mel, I'll go to you first. How does it feel to be a part of that organization that's this company that's doing some really crazy cool things, commercial spaceflight, the moon? It's going to be awesome because you also were at Virgin Orbit before too. Yeah, so you've already had a couple of them in just a few years.
Yeah, it just all kind of escalated after I graduated. I'm not sure how it happened. I think it's because I had NASA on my resume. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, it feels a little surreal just because I grew up in this tiny town in Germany, and I had no idea what's going on. And then I don't know, I go back to school at 32 or 33. I graduated at 36. And then I get my first rocket job at 36 also. Maybe I was 37 already. I don't know. But yeah, so it's bizarre. And it feels very surreal to know that I'm working on a rocket that might be bringing humans back to the moon at some point. I'm not directly working on the moon lander, but I have a couple friends that are. And it feels surreal. Sometimes I feel a little bit disconnected, but it's, the whole work from home thing. Like we've all been work from home since about like late February. So I haven't really seen my colleagues in like half a year or over half a year. But every time you open files at work and then you see what's actually going on, and it feels surreal. I hope I get to crunch some data for the moon lander though. Like I'm hoping they might pull me over to be like, hey, we need some structural dynamics people for moon lander. We don't have any. Can you come help us crunch some data? And then I'll be like, yes, please. I'll have to ask my boss if I can, but I hope he'd say yes. Yeah.
You hope, fingers crossed.
That's so incredible that you can work on moon rockets from home. Can you imagine telling that to like the guys that designed Apollo or the men and women that worked on Apollo? Yeah, in 2020, we're going to be doing this from home.
You know what? They were smarter than us. Let's not fool ourselves. They were smarter than us. They managed to get up there with what the computing power of a freaking like calculator. What was it? T whatever 81, the ones that we have at school. I don't understand how they did it. When I see our file, our like our piles of files and our data files, and then I'm like, how did they do that? How did they didn't have all the computers. Where did they file all their stuff? And how did they find all their stuff? I don't understand how they did it. Maybe we never went there. Honestly, now that I know how complicated it is to make a rocket, I'm becoming a conspiracy theorist a little bit.
Well, that just made everything super awkward. I was going to say, I happened to work with somebody who was one of the volunteers at the Space Foundation Discovery Center, who was 23 years old when he became a rocket scientist for NASA. And he worked with Neil. It's actually funny because there's a picture, and this is something I didn't know, that was that Fred Hayes was one of the backups in case somebody got sick for Apollo 11. So he has a picture of him, Fred Hayes, Neil, and Buzz all working on the Apollo capsule and just going through some stuff. And Lou's got some incredible stories. Hopefully, I mean, he's getting better now. He actually hurt himself not too long ago, but I'd love to have him on and have you all tell or listen to some of the cool stories that he has. So we'll look at that for a future episode. But one of them is that, so after the Apollo 1 incident, they were very particular about anything that could create any sort of electricity, static electricity, anything in the capsule. So they wouldn't allow them to even eat like hard candies. And he had snuck them some hard candies. He's like, listen, I'll sneak these to you, but you can't bite into them. You can only suck on them, because they were that worried about just the least little thing could spark that oxygen heavy atmosphere that was within the capsule. Because of Apollo 1. Apollo 1 was a very small thing that happened, apparently. Yeah. And then, it's very quick to take it over. So they were very particular about that. So they gave him a little bit of hell, and so he snuck Buzz and Neil some candies. And he's got so many wonderful stories about that. He's one of our many incredible volunteers that we have at the Discovery Center. So if you ever get to Colorado Springs, you get to come visit. I've taken Daniel. Graham's not been yet, but Graham will eventually. No, Graham, let me take this back. Graham's absolutely been there. He was there one night when I wasn't there. I was supposed to be. I was trying to get back from Yuri's night, and I got stuck.
Yuri's night.
Yeah, and so, but I have film, and it's super funny because I have film of a couple people that I've become really good friends with that are speaking to each other from from a year ago. They're talking to each other on this video. It's completely randomly captured. I didn't tell Isaac, my videographer, to capture any of that. And it's so awesome because, now I'll watch this video because we're going to start using it for Space Symposium 365 stuff. And I'm like, oh, there's my buddy Jeff Gagne talking to my friend, two of my really best friends now. And it's just this really weird thing how these things still happen, how we're all connected even if we don't have somebody to connect us. And that's one of the reasons that, Space Fam is so cool. So, Daniel, I kind of want to go to you on that now after we've talked to Mel about it a little bit. You've done so many different things. Obviously, you love Snoopy. We love the fact that we do, at Discovery Center, we've actually got some free stuff for people. If you have kids and you need some cool stuff, on the website, Discover Space, we have Peanuts crafted educational free stuff that you can check out, which is great. But Daniel got to come and visit me not too long ago, and he's doing amazing things. So, Daniel, tell us a little bit about the cool stuff you all are doing at Astrobotic.
Sure. So our company started in X Prize days. X Prize was a transitional moment because it really represented this idea of private companies could go to the moon. And back in X Prize, one company did it. It wasn't us. It was SpaceIL. So cheers to SpaceIL. I worked with them when I was at spaceflight as a mission manager back in the day, prior on SSOA, on a Falcon 9. And they did some groundbreaking things in terms of being a private entity that actually made their way to the moon. They may not have landed, but they made it pretty far. And honestly, for a private company, especially one who's never built a spacecraft before, to do anything more than separate from the launch vehicle is supremely impressive. And it was definitely an inspiration for many within the field. So that was the Google Lunar X Prize, X Prize in general. Then came CLIPS, Commercial Lunar Payload Services. 3 companies came on. 2 still are around, Intuitive Machines and Astrobotic. We both have missions. We're going to the moon next year in 2021 to land at a mid-latitude location, but to deliver the first NASA commercial lunar payloads to the lunar surface. And that is super exciting. One, NASA's trust in us to do that. And 2, NASA's capability to support a commercial market for lunar delivery and exploration. So that was phase 1. Phase 2 is where I am. So I'm managing our Griffin mission, which is delivering the Viper rover to the moon. And the Viper rover is really there to go explore volatiles. So things like water at the South Pole. That's beyond exciting. That's what really matters for crewed exploration to the South Pole or to the moon in general, for future NASA missions. So we're going to be doing that in late 23. We're delivering to this rover that's nearly 500 kilograms in mass. So not anything small. It's not a CubeSat. It's a real rover that we are taking to the surface. And it's super exciting that we're doing that from a CLIPS perspective, from a NASA perspective, from a commercial perspective. Totally new paradigm, but really opens up the frontier for everyone else to do the same thing. So I'm really excited for everything else that's happening in that trade space, if you will, and exploration space. So I'm excited for all the other lunar missions that are going to be coming down the pipeline, either before us or after us.
So very exciting. I mean, again, we've got such a wonderful panel here tonight, and so we're going to do a little bit of a turn here. I want to kind of talk a little bit about the cool stuff that that John Lee and Eddie are doing in the education realm. And John, I want to go to you first as an author. Again, a lot of people they're saying, you know, congratulations to you, to both you and Lee, for what you've been working on. And again, it's something that John was highly successful. John and I have something in common. He actually did better than I did. I had an exceptional career that I moved away from, making a lot of money, and it was difficult for me to do that. Like, it's something that I struggled with for a long time. I've been talking about it on Facebook this week that, you know, like, it screwed up my credit for a while because I was paying for college on my own. You know, I had a bunch of, like, car payments. Like, it's difficult to make that decision later in life, just like Mel did as well, to go back to school and try and do these things later on when you're already you're possibly very established in something, and something that you love. Like, I was a DJ, Mel was in bands, like, playing music is incredible. One of the people that may join us later, she was in bands and doing a bunch of amazing stuff as well, you know, making music, and now her and her partner do incredible rocket launch videography and writing and all kinds of beautiful stuff, and now she's mixing music and space together, and they're working on this really cool thing, so I hope that she gets the chance to join us a bit later. But John, I want to go to you first, talk a little bit about the inspiration for these books, and somebody as a father. I know it's something that's very important to you. I got to work with the wonderful Jeff Gagne, who wrote the Zach and Zoe book series, and I know what that meant for him after he had some issues with his health. He wanted to write this book for his little girl, and I was able to be a part of that series, and I know what that meant to me. And I don't have any kids. Like, I just love being around them at the Space Foundation. But let's talk a lot about what you do and why this matters so much to you, that now you're such a prolific writer, and kind of the successes that you've had.
Yeah, gosh. So it all goes really back to when I was volunteering with the NASA Night Sky Network, and you know, we'd have these huge groups, 100 to 400 people per night, and there was just a huge opportunity. Like people, they weren't brought up to speed in those sort of critical years of middle school through high school, you know, to know what space has to offer, both in the exploration side and the science side. And so when I started producing content, I just realized how big the gap really was. And so that it almost took over my life, because I'm like, I could see where the gap was at this point. And it was like, all right, let's write 50 things to see with a telescope. All right, well, no one really knows much about the moon, so let's write 50 things to see on the moon. And then my wife and I partnered on 50 animals that have been to space, and we're really excited about that one because it's going to go into hopefully all the schools in the United States. It just got a starred review on one of the literary journals that should push it to automatic ordering. And then in terms of space exploration, we did 50 space missions that changed the world. That comes out in November of this year. And it's all about getting people up to speed in the most simple and most accessible way possible. And then with the Learn to Stargaze brand, just going back to the basics and doing as many YouTube videos as I can that just really hit these really strategic spots that I feel like people are missing, like how to find the North Star, how to find the Big Dipper, how to identify the stars in the southern sky for each season, that sort of thing. So just really getting people up to speed so that when people talk about space, you know, they get it. So that's just some of the stuff that I'm working on.
It's exciting too. And actually, you know what? I want to talk a little bit about the event that you told me the other night that I'd never heard of, and I'm sure a lot of people here haven't, because you were saying it'd be really cool if I came up for it. To be able to party under this giant moon at this event that you all have, the Moon Bazaar or the Space Bazaar or whatever it was called. Can you tell everybody a little bit about that? Because I think there's a lot of people that don't know this. And once we're allowed back into Canada, I would love to come to this because, man, it sounds incredible. Like, you had me hooked on it. I was like, you should probably come up, man. We'll do some vlogging and blah, blah. Yes, I will.
Well, honestly, so this event, I'm not quite sure how long it's been going on, but it's one province over for me. So it's about a 5-hour drive. I haven't actually gone yet. I've just had everyone that I know has been talking about it. So I've just had, I've been in school, so I've had exams and all this other stuff that overlapped it. But again, it's you've seen the pictures. It's huge. There's a ton of telescopes, a ton of astronomy organizations, and again, it gets the whole city, 20,000 people, DJs, parties, vendors. And it's in a place that almost no one knows about. Like, who knows about St. John, New Brunswick, right? And but there's a huge fan base for space there because of an organization called Astronomy by the Bay, and they've been such good science communicators that they've sort of almost turned this whole city into space fans. And so now you have giant events like the Moonlight Bazaar.
And I mean, that's so cool that there's still so many places really around the world that have these really cool events. I had never heard of Starmus, and if you've never seen Starmus or heard of Starmus, go look it up because, oh my God. Oh my Sagan. Sorry, let me back that up. So I mean, it's it's very important you go check this out because it's the Stars Meet Music. That's Starmus. That's what the name is. And the wonderful David Eicher from Astronomy Magazine was actually the one that introduced me to it. But it's huge because it's the mixture of, you'll have, Stephen Hawking's been there. The year that he passed away, David Bowie was going to be there, but obviously he got sick. But one of the people that's one of the organizers is Dr. Brian May. So it's all these incredible things. Like, I've never seen him do it live anywhere else before, but Chris Hadfield and his band did Space Oddity live on stage. It's just this huge event, and I'd never heard of it. And I was like, what? So I can't wait. Hopefully it happens next year because I can't wait to go. There's a lot of the people that I still haven't gotten to simply because they're not from the U.S. that are on like my top 10 list of people I'd like to meet. Hadfield and Brian May, obviously. How can I not? He was a musician that left a job doing music successfully and became an astrophysicist and now does all these cool things. How can that guy not be an inspiration to me? So I'm really excited.
From being the guitarist of that band into becoming an aerospace scientist is so cool. I mean, we have to love that, right? Like, how can you go from Queen into then spending the latter part of your life being a planetary scientist? It's remarkable.
Well, the fun part of the story is that he was already doing it, and his family was upset at him for quitting to be in Queen. And then once he got done, he's not done with it. Once he had kind of had those really huge successes, he went back to it. Now he's an author. He does that a lot. He does a lot of the books with David Eicher that I mentioned, the editor-in-chief of Astronomy Magazine. I mean, it's just incredible that what's out there and how space can inspire absolutely any one of us. And so, John, love all the stuff you're doing. And Lee, I want to go to you a little bit because you and I have talked about this before. Like, we really, I mean, even at my age, I would at least, by the time I'm 50, be astronaut qualified. I want all those things. And you've got a lot of those things ticked off already at 22 years old. So obviously education is really important to you. I know that there was, you were working on the STEM, and that video series is still out there. We'll talk about that. I want to talk a little bit about this now with your YouTube series before you started Passage. So why has education been so big for you, science communication? And what's Daniel, you're cracking me up. I keep seeing the Snoopies moving. But Lee, tell us a little bit about why this has been so important to you in general.
I mean, so my background is in videography and filmmaking. Like, that's what I've been doing since I was 7 years old. And I failed calculus 9 times. And I paid for every single attempt. Like, after so many grueling years of trying to finish calculus, Calc 3 was my last class, and I finally finished it this summer. If I only had, I grew up in, like, throughout high school, doing videos for my, like, high school's TV production program and doing news stories of things going on in my community. And my friends would always make fun of me because I sucked at math. My friends were total nerds, biomedical engineers, astronomers, all these science-oriented people. And I've always gravitated towards it because it was so amazing to see the things that they would talk about, the conversations they would have. And I was always the artist, the film guy, the video guy, and failing algebra 2. Every single math class that a human being can go through, I failed it. Statistics, college algebra, geometry, trig, all of it. Failed it at least once. But it's so important to have that support system and the opportunity to explore STEM fields, because the reason I got into astronomy and the reason I got into science was because of one person named Helen. She's a NASA astronomer. She flew on Sophia. She did a lot of stuff with infrared. And later on, she became a teacher. She's still an astronomy teacher and works at the Fox Observatory in South Florida. And
hey, Daniel, have you ever heard of Sophia before?
Never.
Never?
It's some airplane with like someone with a telescope in the back, like looking out the window. But
It's so quite literally the picture that we utilized for the promo tonight from Daniel is Daniel at the top of the steps going on to Sophia because it's one of his older jobs. So yeah,
it's a super amazing telescope that has unparalleled infrared observation capabilities. So that is compared to space telescopes. It doesn't exist today, and it's not planned to exist for the next 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
And you correctly you and it's not that you just worked on it. You literally worked on it, like you flew on it to work.
Yeah, Sophia is unique in that the mission operations crew, like imagine mission control at JSC, if they were flying on ISS, that is Sophia. So the mission operations crew flies on the vehicle, which is the future. Like I think of Sophia as a model for a future ISS or beyond LEO studies, because you're getting mission ops in operations like real-time operations.
And so, Graham, you said that you had a buddy that flew on it 4 times. You want to mention who that was and see if Daniel knows him? It's another Daniel.
Daniel Angerhausen is a research scientist with Blue Marble Space Institute of Science. He's currently in Switzerland at Bern, and he's also working on the upcoming LIFE telescope mission. But he's flown 4 times with Sophia and has done a lot of research with this really cool telescope where they can open the side of a 747 aircraft and have a telescope looking out at the heavens. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
It's really wild. 4 flights is awesome. Most of the operators have flown hundreds of flights. So that's the cool thing about it. Imagine a telescope in the ground where you can an observer a night here, a night there. Or you've got a team dedicated to an instrument who flies hundreds of flights. My wife has just completed her 100th flight quite recently. So that's super exciting, as well as many other astronomers, observers, etc. So that's the cool thing about having a ground-based telescope that can fly. Like you get space quality, but you can do it on a repeatable basis.
John's just grinning his face off right now.
It's interesting to call it a ground-based telescope because it's an aircraft-based telescope, but like we have ground-based, we have space telescopes, but Sophia was totally something different, and that's awesome.
Indeed.
Yeah, so I have a story about Daniel. So I was on a plane leaving San Francisco, and I just quit my job, and I'm flying to Canada to start my new life. And there's this guy on the plane. He just looks so cool. And I just wanted to, I'm like, who are you? He had these giant headphones and a giant big laptop covered in all these stickers. And I was like, oh, I want to be like him. And I was like, what's your name? Or something like, hey, I'm John. And he like pulls his headphones off like this. And he's like, oh, I'm Daniel Angerhausen. I work on Sophia. And I was like, that's so cool. And so that, I mean, that's my celebrity. That's my favorite celebrity encounter right there was with Daniel.
I love it. So I want to go back to Lee. Lee, sorry to interrupt, but it was just so cool that you mentioned it. Now, obviously, it's something that everybody here it's exciting for all of us because there's nobody here that doesn't love and isn't excited about astronomy, and that is such a cool mission that not many people know about. But Lee, let's go back to where you were at and how you were excited about that mission and so on.
Yeah, no. So Sophia is really cool, and it really is a one of a kind thing. And so Helen was this lady at the observatory that I used to to go to. I did a video production story on that observatory and her, because she just recently came back from her mission, I think. And she just said, you want to check out the observatory? And I said, yeah, I guess so. And so she pointed like in between like this huge pine tree line, there was like a little gap, and you can see like a tiny dot in the sky. And she pointed to it and she's like, that's Jupiter. And I said, no, that's an airplane. There's no way that's Jupiter. And she took out this, 70 millimeter telescope, pointed it at the dot, and I saw Jupiter and the 4 Galilean moons, and it was mind blowing. And that one thing that happened to me when I was 14 kind of sparked everything else that happened, and ended me up to where I am. So it's important, I think, for a lot of kids, especially that don't have exposure or an interest or a belief that they could succeed in science, to have that boost early on, and the opportunity to chase whatever goals they want to in this field.
Absolutely love it. And I mean, what a perfect way to go to Eddie and the opportunities that you give to folks. Can you give us a rundown of all the, I think you may have done it a little bit earlier, but the all the amazing organizations that you work with, and they run the gamut. When we say underserved, I mean, they're underserved, but we're not talking about small communities. We're talking about absolutely massive communities. They're actually more of the majority of the world than it is, just, the general folks that we see, the people we saw on Apollo. That is not really the representation of the world. And Eddie works with pretty much the other 95% of the world. So let's talk a little bit about the work and give us all those organizations. And if you can, give us a little bit of a breakdown of what they do. So if there are people that are listening that are a part of these communities, maybe they would like to be involved or be mentors or supported in any way they can.
Sure. And it's cool that you brought that up right now. Right now is my quote unquote busy time. Obviously, if COVID hadn't hit, I'd be on the road right now. So the next conference for me that's coming up is Great Minds in STEM, which is a big Latinx Hispanic national conference. Probably about 7,000 would congregate on a particular city. They were supposed to be in Orlando this year, but obviously it's going to be all virtual. And I would do workshops there, soft skills, and then obviously you can come to the quote unquote NASA booth. And we do things a little different with the underserved, underrepresented. We're not just going to say, here, go to that laptop over there, that iPad, and put your name in, fill out a profile, whatever. We'll actually look at the resume and we'll actually talk to them and give them a conversation. And, what is your major? What are your goals? And if we happen to have an engineer or a scientist in that field, we'll say, well, let's come over here and let's go talk to them. So when they leave, they're leaving with, you know what? They're just regular people like us. And he looks like me. I can do this. So then the next conference that I'm going to be working, which is the following week, is ACES, which is the Native American conference. And it's probably about 4,000. And again, same drill, a team from NASA will be there. And we'll be telling them about different opportunities, pathways, internships in the fall, internships in the summer. And then finally, the last national conference I'll be working on is SHIP, which is the Society of Hispanic Engineers, Professional Engineers. And that's probably about 10,000. And they have 7 regions all over the nation, thousands and thousands of chapters. And I'm doing a lot of work with the individual chapters and regions now, helping them to get prepared for a national career fair, what to wear, even though it's virtual, how to stand out, do's and don'ts and things like that. And I really enjoy doing things like that. And then hearing some of the stories and the questions like, well, how can I do that? And again, in our culture, I'm half Native and I'm half Mexican American. I can tell you numerous times, and again, this is very relatable. You're at a table with all your family and your friends, and you say something positive like, I got an internship at NASA. And if you quickly scan the room, not everybody's smiling and not everybody believes that you can do that. How did you get that? And you better not blow it. Instead of congratulations, you're going to do great. You're going to make us proud. So it's that imposter syndrome that immediately kicks in. And I like to be that conduit of saying, you can do this. You absolutely can do this. If I can, you absolutely can. You're far more educated than me. For me, I've already been down the path that you're on, and I've set a trail for you. Just follow it, and I will help you. I answer every email. I get 200 to 300 a day. And if I don't get to it, I tell people, email me again. Second attempt in the subject line. And if I can help you, whether it's, can you take a look at my resume? Can you motivate me? I'm feeling kind of down. I've got an interview today. Then that's what I'll do. And one of the things I like saying is like, well, tell me, what is your goal? And then I'll say it like you mean it, and put your intentions out there in the universe, and it'll happen. And of course, surround yourself with similar people. Because if you're the smartest guy in the room, you're in the wrong room.
I love that.
Yeah, I can't say enough about that, and absolutely, and it's amazing. And actually, Eddie, so I want to ping you about something. We're working on something with Space Foundation New Gen that's going to help highlight things that you can do to stand out in the crowd for just what you were talking about. And we're talking about people to be on that panel, so I'm going to ping you about that. I'm actually emailing the head of our New Gen right now. I think you'd be perfect for it. Sure. But let's also talk about what you got coming up. You have some stuff this week, and you have a really cool story about one of the astronauts that's going to be on that panel with you that I really want to talk about. So first, tell us about the panel, and then I want to talk to you a little bit about the cool story you told me about how you connected with your wife before you asked her to marry you, and that cool story.
Yes. Okay. So this week I'm going to be the moderator of a really cool panel. This is for Great Minds in STEM, and we have 3 award winners, Dr. Margaret Dominguez, and she's from Goddard, and Dr. Albert Davalos from Ames in California, and then, of course, Jose Hernandez, former astronaut, and now CEO and founder of Tierra Luna. And it's going to be an amazing panel. We did a dry run on Friday just to kind of get everybody, familiar with themselves, with each other, and, ask them some questions. And we had such a great time. It really flowed well. And Ron, thank you so much for your advice. When I pinged you the other day and said, you do this amazing, and I want to be amazing too. I mean, I've moderated panels before, but I wanted to do something a little different, and you really helped me with some of your words. So thank you for that.
Of course, man, absolutely. And speaking of another great moderator, we have a late edition. So Beth Munn's been watching, and she does the Incredible Casual Space podcast. And so she's been talking to everybody all through the show. She's one of the best in the business at doing what she does. So I was like, Beth, you got to jump on. You've never been on the show before, and we'll have you officially on in a future episode. But I love that you come on for a few minutes and say hello. Tell us a little bit about the cool stuff you do, and then we're going to talk about Daniel's hat.
Yeah, I have so much fun enjoying the conversation and what you guys do. And I've been watching the whole time, and I'm like, it's kind of creepy. I think I will join you, and it's a pleasure. I'm getting two conversations though at the same time, so I'll figure that out.
Might be getting some feedback, so everybody don't forget to mute yourself if you're not talking. One of the reasons is because of me, because I don't have my headphones. I left them at work because I'm a goofball. But Beth, we're glad to have you on to say hello tonight. The next celebrity I want to meet is Graham's Beard. So next time you come up, here's what we'll do. Imran, next time you come up, I'll talk to Graham because he's only in Boulder, about 90 minutes away. Yeah, maybe a little more than that, depending on that, but on a weekend or something, maybe your whole family can come down, Graham, and I can finally meet Nolan, and we'll all have a blast. And so Beth is glad to have you on. But actually, before I go to Daniel's hat, Eddie, you got to tell us the story about how you went to Mexico, and you went to this condo, and that was like the whole sales thing with you and the love of your life.
Yes. Okay. So at this time, again, she's now my wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, and I was doing a talk, and I shared the stage with Jose Hernandez, the astronaut. Great story. Google him, please, and read his book. He is amazing. So we're in Puebla, Mexico, and we were thinking of going to one of the Mexican resorts for just a couple of days, just fly there. And he said, you know what? Go to my condo. It's in Zihuatanejo. We've got a hot tub on the roof, and it's absolutely amazing, and nobody's there. So we literally had our own private beach. We had this amazing 3-story condo, hot tub on the roof. So the first night we're there, I set up some wine, strawberries, and did the whole thing. We're in the hot tub, and we're looking at the stars, and we can see so many stars and planets. And as if I had planned it, here comes the International Space Station. And that sealed the deal. She's like, oh my goodness, we're staying at the condo of an astronaut, and the International Space Station came over. This is it. This is the guy. So, yes, that sealed the deal.
Dude, that's such a great story. Okay, so he's gonna leave here in a minute. So, Lee, I want to hit you real quick with just let everybody know what's going on with Passage, how they can donate. I mean, really, we're only just a couple $100 away. If you can give 5, 10, 20 bucks. Let's also mention this. It's not like if you give, it's all you're doing is giving money. There are opportunities that you have at different levels of 5, 10, 20, 100, 500, $5,000. You have your name on the plane. I mean, there's all kinds of cool stuff. So if you want to give us that breakdown so people can know that if they donate, what they can get.
Yeah. First of all, I wish I could stay longer. This is such an amazing conversation with some awesome people. But yeah, so we have a lot of amazing things going on for Passage. We're bringing school supplies to kids who need it in Latin America, get them involved in STEM, get them opportunities to succeed in science. And for $25, we actually secured recently the opportunity to do Martian training in the Mojave Desert. So we're giving away 6 mission crew tickets that we're going to raffle through, and 6 people randomly selected are going to be able to do real Martian training with an organization I can't say the name of yet, but it is very exciting. And there's a lot of other cool stuff, tickets to Kennedy Space Center, a mission patch designed by Tim McGagnon. He's NASA's official patch artist. He's an awesome guy. T-shirts, all that fun stuff. Your name on the plane, a flight on the Spirit of Science. It's our flying laboratory. It's like a mini Sophia at the moment without the telescope, and it can't really fly at 50,000 feet, but it's still really cool. And it goes to a great cause. So thanks, Ron, for letting me plug that in. I hope you guys will be able to donate and help our cause.
Always awesome to have you on. And again, we're going to be doing more of those live streams, so make sure you check those out. And thank you, man. We're glad that we had some time with you tonight to be able to talk about it.
Definitely. And nice to meet you guys. And I'll see you next time, Ron.
Awesome stuff. So Graham in particular wants to hear more about Mel and all the amazing things that she does. So it's always great when an actual person on the panel wants to hear more about another person on the panel. So Mel, you've got a really cool story, and you're doing a lot of really cool things with, you were doing it. I haven't been on Instagram in a while to see if you're still doing them, but you were doing videos, and we've talked about it too, about you working with Stardom, creating some video series, still something that I want to do with you. So tell us a little bit about why this is so exciting, but also why you want to kind of help educate other people and also show that, I mean, we're both really tatted up, and that's not something that we've got both of our arms covered. You've got way more than me, but I mean, that's something that we don't see a whole lot. We're seeing it more and more, but I had a really great conversation with Bobak Ferdowsi a few weeks ago for the Humans to Mars Summit, where we talked about he made a whole lot of people feel like they had a place when they saw this really amazing guy with I can't remember what color the mohawk was at the time, but was it blue? Okay, so like now I think it's like pink, and he's got a mustache, and he's just the coolest guy ever. But that made a whole lot of us feel like we had a place, and we saw the same thing with somebody that worked on Rosetta or one of the other missions as well, where we're finally starting to see more people that look like us. It's becoming more representative, and I know that's a really big thing for you too. You are muted.
Man, this happens to me in meetings like every day. This is just terrible. The double mute. Yeah, it is really important to me. And I think it kind of goes back to what Lee was saying, that he wants kids in particular to be able to be inspired by this, because I'm an 80s kid. So I was born in 82 and I grew up in the 90s in a tiny town in Germany. I had absolutely no relationship with space whatsoever. I sucked at math. I mean, just terribly. I failed 9th grade in math and physics and a bunch of other classes. I barely graduated in Germany because of math. I remember making a deal with my math teacher. She said if she can tell I'm actually trying and I show up to class every day, she will give me a passing grade so I can graduate. I never even thought about becoming an engineer. It was never something that was even in the realm of possibility. Like, it never even crossed my mind. It just wasn't even there. No one in my family is an engineer. No one in my surrounding anywhere around me was an engineer. Like, it just wasn't a thing. I don't even know what they all do now, come to think of it. I need to check on what all my aunts and uncles do. But so, and I sometimes wish that I would have had a role model like that sooner, because then I feel like, I mean, I don't think I wasted half of my life. I'm not that old, but I feel like I could have a lot more experience at this point if I had known that I'm good at engineering 10 years sooner. Granted, I wouldn't have been on tour with bands, and I wouldn't have been a nanny and like all of that other stuff, and I don't regret any of that. But and on top of that, I started getting pretty heavily tattooed in my early 20s, and it kind of escalated just because I was on tour with a lot of bands all the time during those years. And if you haven't noticed, a lot of hardcore bands are very heavily tattooed, just kind of spilled over. So for me to go back to school and try to become an engineer was just, talk about like trying to not stand out in class. Like, you know, you want to be the opposite sometimes, because every time I tried to skip a class, it's like, where's that tattooed lady in the back? She's missing today. So, so there's good and bad with that, but I would have liked to see more people like me in engineering, because maybe I would have gotten the idea a little bit sooner, like, oh, maybe this is a possibility for me. Maybe my tattoos won't be job stoppers for me, because I mean, that's a whole nother thing. And you know about that, Ron. It's kind of like, once you get your knuckles tattooed and your hand tattooed and your neck tattooed, it's kind of over. Like, you can't be work with customers. You can't do any of that stuff, because you obviously lose credibility right away. I have my math tattoo and my Frank tattoo right here. It's Euler's identity.
I love the unit circle on your right hand.
It's the most beautiful math equation in the world, and this is just Frank. I started getting interested in physics after watching Donnie Darko, so there's that. But yeah, so I really want to make sure that, number one, I can maybe help people that think they're too old to go back to school, and I'm like, nah. If you think about it, you know, I was 32 and I thought about it. I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to go back to school and be like completely poor for 4 years. I'm like, I'm poor anyway. I can't get any lower. So I might as well try to go to school and see what comes of it. And then I made it, and I was the oldest kid in school, except for my friend Kenny. And I thought about it, like, I have another 30 to 40 years of working ahead of me, like, before I maybe can retire someday. That's more than I've lived thus far. So I'm like, that totally makes sense. If I still have more than like half of my life to go and having to work, I don't want to do that in the job that I'm not happy in, or at least I want to try. And yeah, I kind of wish that I would have had a role model and a little bit more exposure to that kind of stuff growing up. And I think that's kind of like where I would like to help a little bit. And I know that it's hard for me to actively help, especially during COVID right now. I had planned to go to a bunch of conventions and stuff like that. And obviously that all went down the drain for now. But yeah, it's so important, especially for tattoo people also.
And this is something I want to talk about a little bit more. And Eddie said he had a story as well, but I really do want to ask everybody about this, because everybody on here has had their challenges. Lee mentioned it earlier, how many times he failed calculus. I failed college algebra, and then I failed pre-calculus twice. And then it's one of those things that it's something that permeates a lot on space Twitter, of saying, just because you think that you assume that everybody is a genius, that is not at all the truth. Everybody fails. You are on no one else's timeline has been a big thing that I've personally said. Please do not think that you don't have the ability to do it. It doesn't matter your age. There's this really awesome lady. I'm forgetting her name right now, but she was in her 50s when she went back to school. She was part of NASA's community college program that they had, and she's done incredible things. And Kevin De Bruin, who is one himself, he's an incredible inspiration. He fought through alcoholism, and then he had like somewhere around 130 to 150 different applications to NASA JPL just to be an intern that they said no to before they finally said yes. Then at the end of his internship, they finally hired him like a day before. He was like, I guess I'm just going to have to figure out what I do next. I mean, the stories like these permeate the entire industry. And this is great from Travis Hunter, who works at SpaceX. He says that's almost 10% of our engineers. Travis does not have a degree in engineering. He's just a brilliant guy. There are options out there for you. I do not have a STEM degree, and I was just hired this week by the Space Foundation to do the work that I'm doing. And that is just one of the coolest things in the world. You have options. You can, and thank you all. Of course, I love everybody here, but it's because I get to do cool stuff like this. You have a voice. You are an artist. You are a designer. You are any of these things. You have so many different options. So I want to go around to everybody, but Eddie asked to go next, so I'll go to you because I know you had a story.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, Mel, your passion just comes right out, and man, hit me right in the feels. Okay, so tattoos. So obviously, when I was working at the law firm, I had to hide my tattoos. It wasn't something that I could openly show. But when I got to NASA in 2001, I still was trying to kind of hide them, if you will. And then in 2005, Dr. Charles Valachi sent a memo around. And this is before they were just strictly emails. It was a memo. It said, if you have any tattoos, if you have any piercing, if you've got, a blue hair, pink hair, green hair, or whatever, be yourself. And if anyone says anything, come see me and I'll take care of it.
Yeah.
The next day, oh my gosh, I mean, all the tattoos came out. And it was awesome. And part of what I do, depending on my crowd, I may do maybe something in the incarcerated schools or something like that. I'll start off with a suit. And then gradually I'll take my coat off. And eventually I'll get to a shirt. And then you can start seeing my tattoos. And they're like, oh man, that's cool. Oh, and he's got, he's got 2 ear piercings. And again, I mean, it gives you street cred, but not only that, I want to be me. I want to be true to myself. And this is who I am. And I feel comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And Mel, obviously you do too. And I think that's awesome, man. Be you. Always be you.
Yeah. I actually think I got hired both times because of my tattoos. I'm not going to lie. They're like, I want to work with her. She has cool tattoos. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take it.
And they're awesome. They're awesome. I like them. Thank you.
I mean, that's something that's big for me. I worked at a nightclub where they told me that I had to completely cover everything because it was a, really, it was upscale place and all that stuff. So I took out my piercings. I actually have something like 13 or 14 piercings in my face. I had an inch in each ear, a 00. I had a 2 gauge in my tongue, an 8 gauge in my lip, 2 10 gauges in each eyebrow. I mean, everything I had was pierced and gauged. And it was one of those things that, I kind of got beat up for. But it was also a job where I was like, if I do this right, I'm going to make a ton of money. So sure, I took everything out. But it's so cool to see more and more people now that are we are really, truly becoming space for all. And I love that that's become something that's all across the space industry. Next week is World Space Week, and our hashtag for the week at Space Foundation is #Space Unites. Eddie's going to be on that live stream with me next Friday. Emily Calandrelli, Dr. Tanya Harrison, Dr. Shauna Pena, a bunch of really incredible people. And I love that because a few years ago, that was not as much of a sentiment as it is now. And I love it. So like Robin Semangle and the group at Supercluster, that's another one. One of their patches and t-shirts, I've actually got the t-shirt on the way, probably wear it next week, says, in space, we're all immigrants, or we're all immigrants in space, or something of that matter. And that's a big part of the overview effect. Again, panel we did for Explore Mars. I did one for Space Foundation 2, where we discussed it, that this is what happens when all these astronauts and folks go to space, is that when they're there, they see, you don't see the borders. They're the borders that we've created. We all came from this place. We generally understand that it's Africa. And I know there's some new challenges on that a little bit. There may be some other spots, which is even more interesting, right? How varied life can be. But I think that's something that matters so much. And it's one of the whole points of Space Fam is that I don't like to do, even before it was, I'm glad that it's something that people find important now. But all my shows have always been about that. Before they were about diversity, they were about the fact that these were just my friends, the people I connected with, that made me feel, a part of this. And the majority of the people that are my mentors and my friends and the people that inspire me are women and people of color. There wasn't on purpose, but I mean, it just happened. The first ones were Neil deGrasse Tyson, Ann Druin, Michelle Thaler. I mean, there's all these folks, Michio Kaku, like all these people, and I wasn't looking at that to say these are people that are different from me. They're the people that made me say, I want to do this forever. This is awesome, and I love how connected it's becoming more and more. And I think that's a really, really exciting thing. And Graham, I know it's something that you're particular on too. And actually, depending on if you want to talk about it or not, it's something that you and I have had conversations about, because there was something that you were a part of. We don't have to say what it was, but people were saying that there wasn't enough diversity on it. And that was something that really got you to your core, that people were calling that out. And you and I have another friend that was a part of that as well, and it kind of got to her too. And I think that's what really matters, is that it's important to all of us that we are connecting with more and more people. And I love that that's always been a piece of you as a person too.
Yeah, it's one of those things, right, where we need to be more cognizant of when we say yes to something, that we're also, for those of us who have a voice in social media and science and engineering and space and whatever we do in our lives, I have a voice that is heard by a lot of people, and I know that. And so I need to be cognizant. We need to be cognizant of how we are helping to lift each other up. And I'm involved with an organization where I was unaware that going into this organization, there was really a complete lack of diversity. And I wasn't aware of that going in. I hadn't thought through it. And that situation made me think a lot more through it. And we should not require people who are Black or Indigenous, people of color, it should not be their responsibility to tell the rest of us when these issues are happening. We all need to work together to be aware of these issues, to work together to make sure that everyone's voice is being heard. And honestly, I'm humbled more and more every day. And this pandemic has been, it's been a tragedy. We've lost a lot of people. A lot of folks have been infected with the virus. A lot of folks have died. We can't downplay that. This pandemic has been a travesty, a tragedy upon us. That said, there's also some hope. And I've gained a lot of hope right now in seeing how much this pandemic is bringing us all together online. It's democratizing the internet. It's bringing together more diverse voices from across the planet online. And it's giving me hope that we are going to continue hearing more voices, seeing more faces, having more perspective. The same thing that we're seeing right now happen online is exactly what we need to have happen in space. There have been less than 600 people who've gone to space so far, and most of those people are the average man from America and Europe. We need more people, and not just scientists and service members and engineers. We need people from all kinds of backgrounds to go to space. People who are artists, musicians, people who have various kinds of experiences in the world, and people from diverse backgrounds themselves to come together to share this human experience. And the more that we do this, the more that we hear the story, the shared story of the human experience, the more that we can open ourselves up to understand how we can lift each other up.
I mean, beautifully said, Graham, as always, and that's one of the reasons you're a frequenter on any of the streams and stuff that I do, and one of the reasons that we've become so close. And so there's actually something that we're working on too, and definitely this will be a future episode discussing climate change. And we want to do it in a way with this series that will be basically Climate Change 101. We want to find out that point where people go from, okay, you're going to tell me that in 4 years there's going to be a solar eclipse that's going to go through certain parts of the country, and I'm going to make sure that I'm in Dallas and all these areas, and you'll listen to that part of science, but at some point you say, you'll even understand that there's a difference between weather and climate. But then you'll say that climate change isn't real, and you'll listen to politicians. So Graham's going to be a part of that. Dr. Jason Reimuller from Project Possum will be a part of that. Dr. Orleana Hordesky, will be a part of it. There's going to be possibly a few others too. Maybe even our friends from My Radar who do wonderful things. So there's a lot there. But so next I want to go to, because somebody asked a little bit earlier, just a bit ago, they want to know about podcasts, and podcasts are a big way that we can kind of get out these stories, and that's something that Beth does an excellent job at. And she's got one of the more popular ones. We've got some other friends that haven't been on the show yet, but will be in the future. But kind of, Beth, let's talk a little bit about your story, why you do these podcasts, what it means to you, and I love the title of it is Casual Space. Let's talk a little bit about why that matters in just a second, because we got to add the man, the myth, the legend. Dustin Gibson is joining us, the CEO. Okay, so Dustin, are you the CEO or co-CEO? Is it you and Jenny are co-CEOs? I've never asked before.
Yeah, CEO of OPT. But yeah, can you hear me okay? I think I fixed the audio last time we did this.
Yeah, you sound good for now, man. Absolutely. So we'll go to you.
Cool.
Yeah, we'll go to you in just a second, so we're gonna go a little bit lighter when we go to Dustin here in just a moment, because I wanna show some videos, because that telescope that he gave me for my birthday back in August, there's some videos out about it now, and we gotta watch these, because the team you have now, man, that's doing all your promotional and stuff and videos and stuff, which I'm sure a big piece of that has got to be Mac Attack, because he's so good at it. Can't wait to show these videos. But Beth, I want to go to you and talk a little bit about your podcast and why it's important to you to have these voices out there, and what inspired you to do it. Like, are you even in the space industry? Tell everybody about it.
Yeah. First of all, Space Fam, so good to be here. Thank you so much. It's such an honor, Ron. I love it. So I'm watching the show in the background, and I'm listening, and I'm chatting, and I'm like making my comments. And what about this? And Ron's like, come on. And I'm like, okay, because I'm already totally invested. I love it. Love the show. I started the Casual Space podcast because I'm a former NASA PAO, and my job was to communicate two things. For the first several years of my career, it was to talk about every single taxpayer's dollar, yours, what Johnson Space Center was doing with your tax dollar money at the Johnson Space Center. And as you know, the Johnson Space Center is the home of human spaceflight. So I got really good at sharing and developing and designing the narrative.
All right, I'm going to pause you just real quick, Beth. Can we all talk about how freaking peaceful and like calming her voice is? I'm like, I'm going to just let Beth go the rest of the night. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, it sounds like it's like, we need to get you on Audible so that way you can do like the stuff where you read stories and help. Like, I'm like, I'm just going to listen to that. Yeah, seriously, but go ahead.
We gotta wake up. This is my jam. Nighttime's my jam.
No, it's great, but I'm serious. It's very much a compliment as a DJ for 20 years. Really, I'm like, God, that's an amazing voice.
I was going to say, I'm like, I don't know her podcast, but I'm going to start listening to it now.
Deep respect, Mel. Right back at you. You guys got to come on the show. Everyone's got to come on the show. Open invitation. So JSC, right. We're awake though, right? I'm going to check in on you like a teacher that I am too. Everyone awake. Johnson Space Center is like got all kinds of human stories, and this most amazing, story that I had to be a part of. So I kind of left my job as public affairs officer for the center, and I became the public affairs officer for the International Space Station, which was such a phenomenal job. And so I got to tell the stories of science and assembly. And this was back in the day where we were just getting started working to assemble it in space with the first missions. And then we had our 10-year anniversary, and we were like, we can't believe we just went 10 years on the International Space Station and all these successes, and we've got 10 more to go. And that's exactly where we are right now. I couldn't be prouder. I'm so phenomenally proud, and I'm so allegiance, NASA, that's just me because civil servant. But I left NASA, and there was no platform for these stories, our narratives. All of us have a narrative. I loved hearing your narrative, Eddie. I have yet to hear Graham's. I am got to hear Mel's, and I heard a little tonight, and I cannot wait. But I want to serve as this conduit. And so I was out and about. I'm working in the space industry, and people are asking me when I'm speaking how to connect and where they can share. And they would come up and tell me things from everything from like, my father helped build this part of the Apollo capsule, or my mom was an engineer on the tiles of the shuttle. Everyone's got a story or a space connection or an anecdote. And these stories didn't get told. They were lost. And I worked at NASA, and I had no idea. I was so embarrassed when the book Hidden Figures came out, because I didn't know that story. I knew nothing about that. embarrassed. I was embarrassed. And I'm like, if stories like that exist and I didn't even know about it and I worked at NASA, we got to tell stories, people. So I'm like, where is a platform where these stories can be told? And that's where Casual Space got its start. And I'm like, still working to be the conduit. I find folks like here and on these wonderful places where we're all together and we're sharing these missions. We're all sharing the missions. First of all, one of the missions that I love and hate, like I have this love-hate relationship, is I really wanted to do math, but it's just one of my missions that makes me just cringe. And I'm like, and yes, and you do you. Like your story is so you artist, you poet, you photographer, you food designer, you welder, like that is you. And if math is an obstacle, okay, we'll figure it out together. But that's what I keep hearing that into the industry. And I can't tell you how many times I hear that narrative. And then I'm like, and I'm just waiting for the and, as in Janet Ives of Janet's Planet told all of us last week she's phenomenal. You guys know Janet. She's like working with kids all the time, inspiring kids to look up at space. And she says to me, Beth, you just got to give kids the space and they'll tell you brilliant things. And so if we can all do that and just be like, if we can just get together and give each other that space to share the narrative, you just never know who we're inspiring and whose story inspires us to be space explorers and space advocates. And that's why I'm just sitting here listening with like on every word. And I'm like so intrigued. What's your story? How did that work? What's your journey? What's going on now? What are you working on? And the more we do this and serve as advocates, the better we can serve the next generation and our generation, each other. So everyone this podcast is so great. This live stream and Casual Space, it's just getting started. I'm loving it. It's such an honor.
And so I love this because Beth tried to say a minute ago in private chat that she's like, I don't know if I have anything to say about this. I'm like, yes, of course you do. Don't say that. And I just had to laugh about it. And so Dustin, I want to go to you in a minute. I want to talk about the new telescopes and stuff, but there's been a few people that have asked about it because we haven't touched on Graham's story yet. And Graham's story is actually a really interesting one, and it's something that I know pretty well, so it's sometimes I forget to say, oh yeah, maybe not everybody here knows the same story that I know. So Dr. Lau, I want to go to you for a minute. Share a bit of your story too, because it's not like it's been an easy one, just like for everybody else. One of the times that we sat down, actually the very first time we sat down and had some drinks, we were talking about it, and there's so many people that have PhDs in science that have to find their own path. Like Graham created his own, Uli created her own, Jason created their own, and he was saying, dude, you're probably making more money than me as just a DJ doing what you're doing, working 3 or 4 nights a week. I mean, it's not just because you have doctor in front of your name that you're making a ton of money. People just assume that there's going to be all these opportunities for you. Like, it might be that there's 1 in a million people or a PhD in astrophysics, but that doesn't mean you'll have a job. Astrobiology is relatively new, but there's also the other challenges you have. So I want to talk about that, and then I want to go to Dustin's story, because Dustin's story I love, and we have a connection there as well, because both of us, when we were younger, fitness was a thing too, and Graham, that's a thing for you as well. So let's talk about this, Graham.
Yeah. So how far back are we talking here, Ron?
I mean, tell your story, man. I mean, well, Dustin, I don't think we have anybody that's on after this show, right? You're muted, Dustin.
Yeah. I'm just enjoying it, man. We can go all night. I'm just listening. This is fascinating. So, no, tell the entire story. Go back.
Yeah. Well, no, what I want to make sure is that I don't want to cut over anybody. And I know that you've been working on filling the schedule more. And I just want to make sure that there wasn't somebody that was on after me that was going to do like late night, like sky viewing or anything if we go over. That's all I wanted to check.
I have no idea, but let's just keep rolling. We're good.
Okay, sounds good. Graham, give us the story, man. Tell us about like the challenges and all you do, especially now being a father. Tell us the whole thing.
Yes. So, our lives are a journey. It's a path, and every path, it meanders, and sometimes there are detours from what you expected would happen. And for me, I was an intelligent young man, very smart, I would say. I was very interested in science and space at a very young age. but I had very few friends. I was very socially limited. And that by itself kind of led me into a life of drugs and crime and many issues. There was a moment when I was 17 years old where I was a junkie and a high school dropout, and for a very brief time, a teenage father. And my ex-girlfriend and I decided that we would allow our son to be adopted. And so I was a teenage father for 3 days, and then my son left the room and joined his new family. And that moment in my life, it changed me in a way I never expected. It helped me to realize that I could still follow the path I had thought of for myself before, that I could still become the person I dreamt of as a child, and I could find a way to get away from that other life. And it took a lot of hard work, but I managed to go back to school to get a diploma through a night school program. I spent some time just working before going to college, and it was hard, but I really busted my butt in college to get good grades, and I didn't know what to do, and I ended up studying a lot. And so I ended up studying for undergraduate biology, chemistry, and then also astrophysics before finally earning a PhD in geology. And so I'm kind of a mutt of all the sciences. But, like I said, our lives are our journey. It's a path. And I'm very lucky that even though that son that I had when I was 17 years old, he left my path and started a life with his own family at that point. I'm very lucky that his adoptive parents were very open about the adoption. And I've now been in contact with him for many years. And he's 19 years old now and gave a beautiful speech, actually, for his high school graduation this past year, where he spoke to his graduating class about what they've faced as high school students graduating during a pandemic and what they've been through. And listening to him speak, it really empowered me in many ways. He's older now than I was when he was born. And that really, it touched me in a very special way to hear him speak so powerfully to people of his own age and his peers and others moving forward in this pandemic age. And it made me think a lot about where I am now in my own life. Now that I have a PhD and I'm now working a lot in science communication and research, and working a lot in astrobiology, and I host a show for NASA Astrobiology. And I now have another son, my son Nolan, who is 14 months old. And now I'm on this whole new part of my path, learning how to actually, be a father, be a parent. And even though I made what I think was the best decision of my entire life at that point, by giving my first son other options, I'm very glad now to be part of Nolan's life as his father. And I'm learning so much more about myself along this path. And I always say, I don't know yet what I'm going to do when I grow up. I don't know. I have a PhD, and I still don't know what happens next. I don't know what's going to come down the road 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 years from now, but I'm excited for it. And just like Carl Sagan once said, I don't know where I'm going, but I'm on my way. And I find that powerful because we have options all the time ahead of us. Even when we can't quite see those options and know what's available to us, there are options. And sometimes it takes a leap of faith. Sometimes it takes a choice that's very difficult to face. But however we do it, we can get there. And our paths will always be separate. They'll be our own paths, but we can support each other along the way. And that empowers me.
I mean, obviously, always beautifully said, man. I mean, there's a piece to this that everybody has battles. We all have this. I mean, listen, this has been an incredible year for me. I really can't say enough about it. But if you don't think there's not weekends where I lock myself in my room and don't say a word to anyone, or that I'm not feeling this stuff, like, you can even be successful and still be beat up by this. Like, my sleep has sucked. Like, there's just been a lot that's going on. I don't sleep a whole lot. Sometimes I wake up. One of the things that comes along with being ADHD is that you get really great ideas that you have no choice to get. And you're like, wow, this is really cool. But sometimes those things wake you up at 1 o'clock in the morning when you've been asleep for 3 hours. And then all you can do is just put it down on paper as much as you can, and you don't sleep and you go to work drudging. You're just like, oh my God, this day has been tough. And that's a big thing about this, is that there's a million different ways that you can see this, and don't think that you're not going to have those challenges, and you can't be more because of that. There's very few cool stories that ever started with, so I was eating a salad. There's very few people that have perfect lives growing up, period. And then there's even less people that have done amazing things that haven't been, beaten down. It's that whole, there's no such thing. You have to really grind, you really have to grind the dirt to get to a diamond. The things that are going to happen to you to get you to that point that you were something and you were someone. Had I not been, there's a really great quote from Tony Robbins, and I'm not always, not everything he says is great, but again, diamond in the rough stuff, is that he says, if you got to blame him for the bad stuff, you got to blame him for the good stuff. Had I not been abused growing up, had I not dealt with, the bullying in high school, I would have become a paleontologist at an early age, probably, maybe. Or I may have given up. Maybe it wouldn't have shown me the things that I had the ability to do. But because of that, that's what got me into DJing, that got me out of my shell, that taught me that I had a voice. The first time I made a room full of people laugh was one of the most addicting things in the world. It was just all of these things that became these pieces that when all of this came together, that I was able to now host and be able to do these shows and have these really great conversations. And that's the thing, is that comes with stories. I mean, the guy that's right here behind me, if you've never read or listened to Anthony Bourdain's books, go listen to. I will send you the free link. Email me at stardomspace@gmail, and I will send you the Audible and listen to his first book. And you want to talk about somebody that went through some challenges. We're talking about heroin. We're talking about crack. We're talking about stealing and selling other people's belongings. All the things that he did that made him this incredible storyteller, because it made him someone that wanted to share everyone's stories. That's one of the reasons he's one of my major inspirations. And somebody mentioned earlier they're a big fan of Neil deGrasse Tyson. Everybody sees Neil now. Neil has a joke where he said he couldn't really afford things, and he almost became a male stripper. At one point, one of his friends took him to a place, and he talks about this publicly, so this is not anything that I'm putting out there that he hasn't talked about. And he said once he realized that they were putting asbestos on their thongs and setting it on fire, he said, you know what, maybe I'll be a tutor. And that's a really funny story that he personally shares. I mean, everybody has these challenges, and it's part of the thing. And Dustin, I know it's something for you as well. The fitness world and all the other things you did, and now it's the biggest telescope distribution company in the world. Radian's doing incredible things, and your story is wonderful too. And again, talking about a lot of us that are in the space industry that are tatted head to toe, that may not look like everybody else. You're another one.
I got a few. Not all of them were good decisions. I got my kneecaps tattooed. That was one of the worst decisions of my life. I still regret that one daily. I think about it all the time. It's so ridiculously painful. But, one of the scariest things I've ever heard in my life, I think, was Graham just saying, I don't know what I want to be when I grow up. My God, I was just trying to be like Graham. Now I've got to really figure this thing out.
Well, Dustin, I'll interrupt you this real quick. Just something I love. I mentioned earlier Jurassic Park.
Too.
In the second Jurassic Park book, the character that they absolutely screwed up in the movie, like, she should have been Lara Croft, and I love her, but they hired somebody that just doesn't look or act anything like the character in the book. And the Sarah character is talking to a young girl that she inspires, and she says, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she says, I don't know. And she's like, some of the most interesting 40-year-olds I know still don't know what they want to be when they grow up. And I'm so happy that Graham said that, and I absolutely adore that. Yeah. Just because you were 30 or you were 40 or you're 50, your life is not over. Most of us are living to 80, 90, 100, and with all the advances and medical advances, many of us are going to see well into our 100, 110, 120, and possibly could even be healthy.
That's too long.
No, it's not. It's not all long for me. Fix me now, because I want to be a healthy-ish, 70, but 50-ish, so I can go to Mars. Please continue, Peter Diamandis, and the Abundance Festival and everything you do. So, Dustin, back to you.
Yeah, where do I go from there? Thanks for the segue, man. That's interesting. So, Dustin, unfold that and then carry on. Yeah, so
Welcome to the show.
yeah. No, I always have the best time with you. I really do. And in the podcast,
Same.
every time we do these podcasts, same thing with you, Graham, and we need to get everybody else on the podcast as well, Space Junk Podcast. But it's always so fun because, we talk about space and science, but it really does kind of become storytelling, and it ends up being more of a philosophy podcast most of the time than it does even just like equipment or anything like that. And honestly, that's the piece that interests me most. So when I hear these stories, I was able to get in a few minutes early today. My schedule is usually made for me, so it's just run, and then you've got 10 minutes, and you're like, all right, I'm going to check out what everybody's doing. So I got to hear some of it coming in, and it's fascinating, man. And it's like the perspective that space gives you and the people that it brings together is always what I've loved most about it. But I feel like it's this unifying experience and perspective that nothing else in the world can offer. And so, my first 4 years through college, I was studying philosophy, and I always tell everybody, man, I could have saved so much money if I'd have skipped all the books and just bought a telescope. I'd have learned more in 15 minutes outside than I did. I could have taken the shortcut, kind of Thoreau style, straight to the end game. But, I had no idea at the time. It was actually, I was late in my 20s before I ever looked through a telescope for the first time. So I never thought that I would end up here, where space was the conversation I'm having literally all day, every day, and calling it my career path. Never saw that coming.
And so let's talk a little bit about the challenge you had when you were younger. From fitness to this, you started as sorry, I'm playing your video early by accident in the background. Sorry if anybody heard that, but we're gonna watch that here in just a moment. Going from fitness, you come in, you start working for this company. You have a great inspiration like Scott Roberts, and there's all these people that you work with. And I don't think it was like more than a year or two later you get offered to take over this company and take it from the top telescope authority and distributor in the country to the top in the world. And there's a lot of pieces there that I think would really say you have no idea what's coming, and what you're going to be able to be a part of.
Yeah, I thought I would be in the fitness industry forever. I kept changing kind of academic career paths, started with philosophy, then went to chemistry, and then got offered a job in professional baseball, but I needed kinesiology. So I went back and got a degree in kinesiology, and then started a fitness company because I hated the pro baseball gig that I got. And I felt like
I didn't even know about the pro baseball part.
Yeah, I don't talk about it much. It was like a 1 week thing where I just realized I spent all of this time with a single vision in mind where I knew for sure what I wanted to do. I got there, and a week later I was like, no way. I'm not counting reps and babysitting for the rest of my life. I can't do this. So I started my own company and failed a lot, like a whole lot. And finally ran out of money, and then just got lucky. I had the right client walk in at the right time, right as I was running out of money. And then the programming that I was doing for the fitness company just kind of, it exploded. It honestly, like, I know a lot of people say like it was luck. No, in my case, it really was luck. I'd love to claim the credit for it, but it really was a lot of luck involved. And we were doing something a little different. I didn't like the caloric model training that companies were doing because, everybody's like, oh, well, you got to break down the macros and we're going to bring it down. And it's like this surface level science, but there's no constants in any of the equations. If we all do the same exact thing, eat the same macros, we will get different results. Right. And so we were searching for a single constant so we could figure out some kind of predictive analysis training program. And so what we did is we built it on the
impossible because everybody is different.
Yeah.
Everybody is
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And everybody has different responses to different things. And so even macro planning, it just doesn't, it's not consistent enough that it was predictable in, the professional space for, bodybuilders and models and people who make their money knowing 6 months in advance exactly where they'll be. We had to be better than what that could provide. And so we started programming off the endocrine system because at least then we knew like, okay, well, we don't know what's going to happen if X person eats 30 grams of protein, but we do know what will happen if we spike insulin. right? And we do know what will happen if we can get aldosterone to a certain level, things like that. So we started programming that way, and it was fun. I mean, we loved it. It was a blast. It taught me a ton about business. It was our first. Ginny and I did that company together, and we went to Italy, and that was the mistake, because we got there and we saw how the Italians were living, and there was this guy in a wine shop talking to us about wine. And I swear to God, he talked about wine the way I had never talked about anything in my entire life. This guy was more passionate about grapes than anything I was in my entire life. He was talking about these years, like, oh, 2014, you got to sit down, Dustin. You got to hear about 2014 and the weather we had for the grapes. And I was like, I gotta find that. I gotta find whatever that is for me, where I can talk about grapes for 4 hours, to a stranger. And I didn't have that. So Ginny and I came back and we were like, we gotta change it, So we stopped everything we were doing. We started doing photography, got a telescope off Craigslist, and fell in love with it. And started calling around trying to get answers to questions, because I had no idea what I was doing. Found OPT. They seemed to be the place with the answers. So just on a whim, we moved across the country just to work at OPT as entry-level salespeople. And we did that for a year. And then the old owner, OPT will be 75 years old this year. And the old owner had been there 42 of those. And he found out about our old business, and he's like, Dustin, we want somebody passionate to take this thing to the next level. You two are those people. You have like a background in the digital space. We want it to serve the global community, not just, a locality. And so we said no for a long time. And eventually we both realized, like, we're never going to stop doing this anyway. Let's do it. Let's go all in. Let's do it. And it was the best decision I've ever made in my entire life. I mean, waking up every day with that feeling like, I can't believe I get to do this again. I found my grapes. And, now it's what I do all day, every day, man. I talk about grapes.
I love it. You said that you found your grapes. Like, that just makes me so happy. I love that. I think that's a big thing for so many of us here. Like, I wasn't expecting when I sat down and let me remove this for just a moment. I wasn't expecting when I sat down and was trying to find something on TV because I was hungover and I wasn't going to go out. I was like, oh, I've been seeing this preview for Cosmos. That's pretty. I like the graphics in this. That's cute. You know what I mean? I was like, okay, this will be cool. And by the end of that first 15 minutes, I was done. I mean, I knew that I had found the thing. And I've had a couple of things in my life. The first one was martial arts. That's what saved me when I was growing up and dealing with the bullying. And then from there, walking in and seeing the power of music and what it could do. And that had a huge culmination 2 months ago, well, 6 weeks or so ago, when we had the story, the show here for my birthday. And I've got the band that changed my life, like the Cold Spider that's on my arm, this band that I adore and love, that I get to give them this moment where they get to be a part of this show. They get to talk to Neil deGrasse Tyson. And the first autograph that I gave to someone was the lead singer of my favorite band when I gave him the book, and he asked me for it. The other day, like it was 2 days ago, he texted me to say, congratulations, man, on your new job. I'm so excited and happy for you. This man music moves me all the time. I can't tell you how many times in the last 2 months that he's texted me and his music's like playing, that I'm playing it on purpose. Like, I'm listening to it, and that's one of these really cool things. You never know where life's going to take you. I never had a desire to be a DJ. I was 2 years into DJing when I messaged my mom and said, hey, Mom, you realize that your best friend that you named me after was Big Ron, a DJ. I became a DJ and wasn't even trying. I had no desire to do this, or to do that, and then I ended up doing it and loving it. But I always chased the next thing. When I was, when martial arts, I started falling in love with that. I did, that was when, bodybuilding, I won't say I was a bodybuilder, but fitness was my thing. I was looking at one point of getting my certification so that way I could train people. Then DJing happened. And then whenever the next thing comes up, I continue to follow that passion. I continue to follow my grapes. And we need an OPT t-shirt that says follow your grapes, that has some sort of telescope in there, Dustin, for real.
Yeah.
Really, really do. So I think Daniel's still here, but I'm worried about him because he's been off screen for a while.
Wait. I feel like this is like the introduction for us to have like a wine and telescopes night.
In the desert.
Do we have to do this? Do we have to do this? Like this feels like a thing now. We're gonna have to have like a Dustin finding his grapes story with OPT, and we're just like.
So here's what it is that so if you all don't know, and there's another video, Dustin, if you want to send it to me. Actually, there's a couple videos we can show a few of them because we're gonna be going way past the 10 o'clock hour for me. So if anybody needs to leave, I realize it's super late for like John and others. So if you need to wrap up, just let us know. But I'm going to show a video that Dustin just recently did for the telescopes, Radian. And I do want to show a little bit of a longer video of somebody that he worked with to help create the telescope that will be my first telescope that I've ever owned. And I'm really excited about this because the person that he worked with is, actually, I don't know him yet, but I'm a huge fan of his, and I'd love to meet him someday. But Dustin and I were talking maybe a month or so ago about some cool stuff out in the desert where he has. How many telescopes are there, Dustin, like that are in the desert?
So we have 5 there, and then we have 1 in Texas. Actually, another one about to be installed in Texas, but we're starting to plan, as of actually last week, the next 2 observatory locations too. So we'll have 1 in Chile very soon as well. So they're starting to come back online. We just got to get all the smoke and ash out of the air so we can open these roofs back up,
Love it. So, I mean, that's definitely going to be one that we'll have to do in the future. So I'm going to add this so everybody can see this video that they just recently did. We'll talk a little bit more for anybody that needs to go. Of course, I'll let you bow out. And then there's a longer video I want to play for everybody. That was killer. But this one's awesome. That's kind of an introduction to what Radian is. Radian has been doing different, I guess... So what would you call what they've done so far? So this is going to be your first telescope, but it's the pieces that you need for a telescope that you felt that were missing, correct?
Yeah. I didn't know you were going to play this while I'm here, so that's super weird.
Deal with it. You're going to have to watch yourself, bro.
Yeah,
Jacked mofo.
Cool. Yeah, I'm excited now. It's awkward. But yes, this is Radian. This is our in-house brand trying to solve problems for astrophotographers. We developed a multiple bandpass light pollution filter with the purpose of, we want to be able to shoot deep space from Times Square. That's the goal. So if we can shoot from Times Square, we know anyone in the world can shoot from their backyard, unless they just have one hell of a backyard that I really want to see. Otherwise, their backyard is not too bright. So that was the idea. Let's make this, it's so narrow, 4 nanometers across, 4 band passes. And that, was the Radian Triad Ultra filter. And we did a few other things. And then finally, it was, all right, let's tackle the big challenge. Let's get into telescopes. And, the first telescope coming out is going to you. So, it was your birthday present. You're going to have one very soon. So on the 11th, it ships to you, actually. 11/11. You've got a telescope headed your way, Rob.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay, so here's the first video. We're going to show just a breakdown of this is what Radian Telescopes is. So everybody please mute. We'll watch this one, and then we'll let everybody that needs to go bow out. And then we're going to continue and talk about some other cool stuff. Maybe.
Radian is really, it's a company born of the problems in astrophotography. Astrophotography can be challenging, right? So being astrophotographers, we were trying to find solutions to some of the problems like light pollution, problems like having to repeat a lot of your equipment in multiple systems when you have different telescopes, which ultimately end up being different camera lenses. We wanted solutions to these problems that we couldn't find anywhere. What happens with a lot of companies is that they do this very well, but it's still something that's challenging to navigate. They serve astrophotographers and visual astronomers alike, and so they have to find this middle ground between the two. But we thought there are so many problems specific to astrophotography that it's creating new hurdles that are keeping people from the hobby that we're so passionate about. What if a brand could exist that had a single function just to serve the hobby that I love, specifically astrophotography, with no obligation to deviate from that at all? Started with something really simple, a dovetail. And then from there, we were like, well, if we can solve this dovetail problem, if we can take it reconstruct it the way that we feel like it should have been designed from the first time, right? Like mathematically to fit any set of rings, so I don't have to buy a new dovetail every time I get a new system. What else can we do? This hobby is advancing so quickly, and I absolutely love that Radian gets to be on the forefront of that expansion and innovation. Imaging, just astrophotography in general, is something that I feel like gets in your blood, and once it's there, you don't get it out. It's part of the nature of photography, being able to stop time, and then with astrophotography, not only stopping it, but being able to go back in it. This is exploration that's never been done by humans before. And here we are, right on the forefront of it, pushing this. And so what is Radian going to do? It's going to keep pushing the boundaries. It's going to allow people access to the universe in a new way and be successful in that pursuit. That is what Radian is. It's what it's going to continue to be.
All right, so who produced that video? Was that like Mac and the team?
So our video guy's name is Rafal, and he's awesome, man. Everything he touches, he's so good at it. I actually never have any idea, so I didn't know we were recording any videos. He just shows up and he's like, he records everything out of order, so I have no idea, what he's what he's putting together. And then usually it's like he'll send me this video. I'm like, how did we just do what we did and you came up with this video? But he's really, really great at what he does. His teaser videos, I feel like, there's nothing like it in our industry, at least. So he creates these teaser videos for like your telescope, Ron, and every time I'm just like, man, he's so good with cinematic stuff.
Absolutely incredible. Okay, so I want to go back to some other stuff that we're talking about here, but I know that like Eddie, you have to leave. John, you probably have to leave too. Anybody else that needs to leave, just message me in private chat. I want to go to you all for final thoughts. Eddie, I'll go to you first. Anything else you want to share with us before you leave tonight? All the cool things you're doing, anywhere people can find you on social media. I know that there's more than a few people that I've tagged you in on the Facebook page. I do want to read some of the comments from there because we don't get those in the comments section that have been wonderful. So let us know what's happening, Eddie. And then, of course, we got a baby to talk to here in a minute. Hi, Nolan.
Say thank you for having me on the show. And what an amazing panel. Wow. I'm speechless right now. Again, I'm just really thankful to have the opportunity to work with these great organizations that work with the underserved, underrepresented communities. And even hearing Dustin's story about the grapes, and I know that inspired everybody, but it is so cool in an informal conversation that I have with people when they say, well, what do you do? I work for NASA. No, I work for the next generation of learners. That's who I work for. And that's who I want to inspire. I don't care if you go work at SpaceX or Boeing or Lockheed or Sandia or Disneyland or what have you. I just want you to be successful. And I want to make sure that the trail that I've created for people to come and do this, and that there is opportunities. And if you need help, I'll hold your hand. I'm going to motivate you. I'm going to help you. I'm going to give you some tips. I'll introduce you to my network because I've got this amazing network. And we're going to make this happen. And those are my grapes. Those are my grapes right there. So again, Ron, thank you. I look forward to connecting with you again next Friday. And then I'll share with you how the amazing panel that I'm going to be moderating happened coming up this week.
Awesome, man. Eddie, thank you so much for joining us, coming on, discussing stuff with you. So thank you for joining us, and we will see you soon. Can't wait to talk to you next week. So for those that don't know, I don't think I've mentioned it tonight. Next Friday, we are going to do a fundraiser for education for World Space Week on Space Foundation, all the pages. So go to discoverspace.org and find the World Space Week thing. We start Monday, and we have 3 to 5 things or more every day, a virtual star party. We have an audience with an astronaut, with retired astronaut Dwayne Digger Carey. I'm doing 2 different panels, one on galactic farming. We're going to talk about how we're going to eat on in space. We're going to talk about a bunch of different stuff on that one. Morgan Irons, she just launched on the Northrop Grumman rocket earlier today, her experiment to the International Space Station. We're going to talk to her about that. It's going to be really exciting. So please check that out. And then, of course, the Space Unites live stream. That will be our fundraiser to get more kids that can come into the Space Foundation Discovery Center and learn all the cool things about space. So is there anybody else that needs to go right now? Raise your hand just to let me know. I don't want to kick anybody out. Beth, you need to go. Beth, give us some final thoughts on how people can check out the cool stuff that you're doing on Casual Space, and if anyone in the space industry wants to join your very cool podcast. And Dustin, I think it would be great to hear you and her and Tony all talk to each other on, if you haven't already, maybe you have. I haven't heard every episode of Space Junk, but I think it would be great.
Oh yeah, it'd be an honor to have you. I'd love to talk about it. Everyone, just come on, join me on the show too. And I have to tell you, Ron, thank you for what you do, because I want to be totally transparent and tell everyone in 2 weeks, I will be hosting SpaceCom Expo. So it's this international event, and last year it was in Houston, and it was where I got to meet so many people who are these commerce experts or people in space commerce that are killing it, crushing it. They're CEOs, they're startups, they're selling stuff. And Dustin, you should totally check it out. If you haven't, it's free this year. It's online only. And you guys, I'm hosting, I'm honored. And what I have to, I've never done this before. I think people see us and they're like, wow, we're so accomplished. And like you said, Graham, your PhD, and we've all got all kinds of challenges and blessings. And one of my challenges is, how do I do this? How do I do this? And I love listening to you, Ron, because that's how you do it. I mean, truly hold a conversation, keep everyone engaged. We're all ears. We love hanging on every word. And that's what this is all about. We're in it together. So I look to all of you because your stories inspire me. And then I sit back and I think to myself, like when I really get nervous, or if I'm hosting or I'm on the podcast and having conversations, I'm like, I get so sometimes invested in your stories that I forget that I'm guiding people through the conversations. And I'm like, oh yeah, I have to host, because I'm just like, this is incredible, because we all have something to bring and to give and to share. And let's be transparent about it, because my struggles might be yours. And, Ron, you're such a natural, but I also feel like, Ron, you've worked, well, I know you've worked so hard to get your new job. Congratulations. It's such a gift that we have you as a resource. And, you don't know how many people, Ron and Graham and everyone, Mel, all of us, Eddie, we're all, just by doing what we're doing, just by showing up and being honest and fully being ourselves and in this, we're helping thousands. Some of them will never even know. And that is a real gift. I never take it lightly. Ron, you're giving that gift to us with this show. I'm so appreciative. But do check out the SpaceCom Expo. It's free. And you're going to hear from like Kathy Luters from NASA. You're going to hear from these CEOs and startups. And here's what's cool. International space businesses, everything from last year, like Solstar was there with our friend Kevin Barnett. And last year I discovered this, which I did not know. Well, I discovered a lot I did not know, but last year it was I just discovered this technology. Maybe you guys already know about it. Inflatable antennas on small CubeSats. And I was like, what now? Inflatable antennas. Think of the possibilities. What a breakthrough in the industry when it comes to space commerce. So stuff like that gets shared and designed and it gets, presented. So it'll be fun. I hope I do well, but folks, we'll just all be doing it together. And that's why I love this. Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm loving hearing your stories. Thank you. And Ron, you just got to tell me, I got to come to this every time you're on. So I set my reminder so that I get the update every time you go live.
Well, thank you, Beth. And it's every Saturday night from 8 to 10 p.m. And the whole idea of this, whenever Dustin and I talked about it, was, I wanted it to be there's a lot of people that do a lot of amazing things, and I love to highlight that. Is that there's a lot of folks out there doing great things, but they have so many hours, 60, 80 hours in a week when they're working on developing things. People like like Tim Dodd and like Derek from Veritasium, and what Graham does with his shows, that they don't have time to highlight other people. And I love to be able to do that. I like being on panels, but I love having these conversations and highlighting all the cool things that are going on out there. And Beth, thank you so much for coming on. You want to tell everybody where to follow you on social media real quick so they can keep up with what's going on for you the next few weeks?
Yeah. Just go to the Facebook, the Casual Space Podcast is on Facebook. I love posting there. It's on LinkedIn, casualspacepodcast.com or bethmund.com/casualspacepodcast.com. And the best way to reach me is askbeth@casualspacepodcast.com. Thank you. Thanks, Ron. I really love your show.
Thank you so much for coming on, Beth. And go get some rest and go continue to kick butt and take names. So Graham's got to leave here in just a moment too. So let's say goodnight to him and the little man. And Graham, tell us, your final thoughts, where people can find your podcast that you're doing, because I know you co-host the podcast. And look, even Nolan's into it; he loves it. And also where people can find you social media wise. You always talk about a variety of different things. It's always very funny, or you dive into pretty much anything. You're not really scared of touching on any sort of topic.
Yeah, I may have a minute or two here before Nolan's ready for sleepy time. Yeah, he's kind of tired, aren't you? It's good clappy. Yeah. So I host Ask an Astrobiologist. You can find us on the NASA Astrobiology website. Yeah, little man's tired here, so we're gonna head out here in a moment. Those who want to find me, you can just look up Graham Lau on Google and you find me right away. I am the Cosmobiologist, and so you'll find me on various social media as Cosmobiologist. I was lucky enough to be the first astrobiologist on Facebook and on LinkedIn, so you can find me as Astrobiologist in those places. And Nolan's very excited too. It's Space Fam. It's always very exciting, right? Yeah, it's a clappy. So thanks, everyone. It's always a pleasure.
And thank you as always for your openness, your honesty about what you talk about, and just being willing to share those kind of stories, man. I mean, it's amazing to have you on here, and as always. So Beth, Graham, both of you go have great nights. And so I'm going to play a bit of a longer video, and this comes from Astro Backyard. If you've never heard of him, he's incredible. It's about 8 minutes long. Actually, it's almost 9 minutes long. So everybody go grab a drink. Sit, hang out with us. We're going to be back because you have to see this. I'm going to turn the volume up more this time so that way everybody can hear it correctly. And he's going to tell the story of how he worked with OPT to create this telescope that I have that's on the way that I'm super excited for. So we're going to watch this one, and then we'll come back and have more conversation.
They have a say in a telescope design coming up in the future?
I think you should.
I got to design my own telescope. I'm talking Astro Backyard Signature Series. I designed the style, the name, the packaging, the design, and of course, the specs. And those of you that have been watching this channel for a long time will not be surprised at all as to what I made. I said that it had to be compact so that you can use it on a star tracker. I said that it had to be a triplet apo or I'm not touching it. And it has to be wide, like really wide, so you can capture NGC 7000 or the California Nebula in a single shot. I wanted the optics to be fast, at least f5 or below. And it has to be flat too, and I don't want to have to go around searching for the right flattener to match to it. It has to be built in. You need to be able to attach a DSLR or a mirrorless camera easily without any backspacing surprises. There needs to be somewhere where you can thread a filter inside, because I always get that part wrong. And it needs to be easy to mount too, and easy to mount a guide scope. And it needs to be all black, but not shiny black, like a matte black with red accents, like one of those Canon L series lenses. And guess what? We did it. This is the Radian Raptor 61 APO. This is the first Radian telescope, and if you haven't heard of this brand before, you will after the Raptor. So what makes this compact triplet APO different than all the other options that are out there? I think most of you will appreciate that it comes with everything you need. The bag, the dovetail mount, the rings, the filter slot, the built-in flattener rotator, the integrated dew shield, and of course a few more surprises and options that I don't have on this prototype edition. So I think you've got a good idea of what's included with the Raptor 61, but can it take good pictures? I mean, isn't that what it's all about? I've been using the Raptor 61 in my backyard for the past 3 weeks. I knew it would be flat, wide, and fast, but I did not expect this.
Beat drop. Woo! I am totally dancing right now.
I hope you guys can appreciate the amount of time and effort we put into the design of this telescope. I've taken all my images thus far with my Canon EOS RA full frame mirrorless camera. So a very large sensor and a great test of that full field of view at 275 millimeters and the flatness of the entire field. I know that a lot of you will be connecting your DSLR camera or mirrorless, but also a lot of you shooting with dedicated astronomy cameras, and I'm really excited to see what you come up with in that configuration. So here's exactly how I have the Raptor 61 set up on my Skywatcher Star Adventure in the backyard. It's no problem for a little star tracker like this. So the Ioptron Skyguider Pro, any of those mounts. You might have noticed that I've got that heavy duty Losmandy style dovetail mount on the telescope. I really like that. It's a bit overkill for this setup, but I just love that plate. So it comes with a smaller V-style dovetail mount as well, and you might want to just use that, and depending on the mount you're using, that might be the one that you need to use, but it comes with both, so that's great. So the filter that's inside here right now, I've got the Radian Triad Ultra, but you could use any 2-inch filter that you have, 48 millimeters. There's a threaded slot that you can actually thread your filter in, and it's inside. No messing around trying to find a good spot for it. In this same component here, there's some screws that you can adjust the tension of, and that's the rotator. So I've got it kind of in that great spot where I can adjust it, but it's still very tight. So as you can see, I'm turning the camera, nothing else is moving, so I can align and frame up my target just the way I want to with the camera sensor, but nothing else is moving, and that's essential. Something I was adamant about in the design was the focuser. It had to be super high quality, so it's got the focuser knob on the one side and then the fine focuser on the other, the 10-to-1, and it's super smooth, but it's also very secure. And you can of course lock it into place with the screw on the top here. I've got the camera attached at the back, of course, with a T-ring. The back spacing was not an issue. Where you see it right here was just about totally in focus. So barely out at all, no crazy extension tubes or anything like that. So it keeps it all compact and very manageable. As far as finding focus on this little telescope at 275 millimeter, I use the 30 times live view magnification on my camera on a bright star, use that fine focuser, go in and out until I get it super sharp, lock it into place, slew over to my target. So it's just a real foolproof, reliable system, and I'm just so impressed with the images I've taken with this. As I said, of course, this is a full frame sensor on the Canon EOS RA. Very rare in the dedicated astronomy world, and a lot of you are shooting with APS-C DSLRs. If you are shooting with those smaller sensors, it will be completely flat to the very edges of the field. On my full frame sensor, at the very edges, you can just see some elongated stars just coming out, some coma at the very edges. Very demanding on the optical system to have that full frame sensor. You could just crop it in maybe 5–10% and you have a totally flat image, but I thought it was important that I point that out. I hope you guys are as excited about the Raptor 61 as I am. It's coming out very soon. The pre-order starts tomorrow. So I'm just so excited to see the images that you guys take with this telescope. If you do hashtag AstroBackyard or just Raptor61, will see it and I'll be so proud. I'm so honored to be a part of this project. And I feel like in a small way, I'm helping the astrophotography community because, as I said, I think this is a very pivotal telescope. It sits in that spot between the people that are nightscapers into deep sky astrophotographers. So I expect to see a lot more Andromeda galaxies and Orion nebulas being shared around online, and I'll feel partly responsible for that because of this Raptor 61. So thank you all so much from the bottom of my heart. Thank you for letting me live my dream and to work on projects like this. I'm so proud of it.
Okay, so first let's talk about how amazing Trevor is and the incredible work he does. So Dustin, whenever I do my unboxing, once I get it, we've already talked about this. We're gonna show this. I want to do a live stream for it because one, it's my first telescope that is mine. Over here, I have one that I have been borrowing for 4 years now from the Colorado Springs Astronomical Society, and I can't wait to give it back to them. They've already laughed about it that whenever I do the unboxing, we might have them show up to take this telescope back that I've had forever as a joke, and have the guys so George and Eric, who Eric is George's son, they did the Astronomy Telescope 101 series we did for Stardom called Clear Skies. And so they talked about they might be, coming in and snagging it, and then, while I'm doing the live stream. But I think it'd be great to have not only you on, but have Trevor on to talk about it. Especially if I'll be the first one, because there's so many things he just talked about there that I don't understand. John does. Mel, I don't know how much into astronomy you are. That if you understood what was being said there, but there's a lot of pieces to that. But there's actually a couple questions that I have. I know this is deep sky, but is this something I can still live stream the moon and Jupiter on, or will I need something else for that? A lot of people don't realize that you need different telescopes for different things, and that's a really important thing. And Mel, I see you unmuted, so I want to go to you first just to add, because I did ask you if you are into astronomy or not.
I'm not into it. Mostly I just want to see UFOs at some point. So if someone can make a telescope that can find UFOs like clearly, I would very much appreciate that. I'm very much an X-Files fan.
I think you're going to need to go and work at the Pentagon. And John, I know you're going
to. We're not there yet.
Well, I could just tell a quick UFO story, sort of. So I was working at the observatory. This was, I think, about a year ago. And we're on top of a skyscraper in downtown Halifax, and we've got a 26-inch CDK, a plane wave CDK telescope up there. But anyway, so the power drops out in the whole city, and so I'm with like 20 students, and we're like, oh, what do we do? And the cell phone stopped working; it was really messed up. So we all go on the observation deck, and then we can see over the Atlantic Ocean, and these bright lights start rising out of the sea, and we're like, what is going on? And the students are like freaking out, and they're filming it with their phones and everything. And I'm like, wait a minute, guys. I'm like, this is a science class. I'm like, we can figure this out. But they were having none of it. They were like dropping F-bombs all over the place, freaking, and they were blindingly bright. And so what we did is we lugged out these Dobsonian telescopes and pointed at these like bright lights that were rising out of the sea. And what it turned out is that the Navy was lighting off these flares for whatever their exercises they were doing, so they could see. But we ended up solving it with the Dobsonian telescopes that we had on hand, but I had the whole thing on recording. So like, if you ever get the chance, I can play you this the sounds of these students thinking we're being invaded by UFOs.
Oh, I love
And
it.
it's fantastic.
I don't prescribe to conspiracy theories, but they're still fun to watch. So much fun.
Definitely.
Okay, so Dustin, I want to go to you next. Is that so I mentioned, like, is this something I can, like, can I still, if I'm pointing this at the moon, what am I going to see? Is it not going to be built for that? Because every telescope's different, right? So can I live stream the moon? Can I live stream, Jupiter and Saturn and other things? Will it be enough of an image that it's worth it? Because, I mean, it's going to be incredible. The pictures from that are nuts. And I'm fine with it being more deep space stuff for sure. And I know, like, Will Young will be as well. And there's a ton of people that we've talked about this. Every time you guys put something out, like, thousands and thousands of things sell for it. And I mean, that's your job. That's what you want to do. You put all these things out and you say what's missing in the market and you create it. And you work with incredible people like Trevor. So let's start with that question. Again, like, we're at 10:18 right now, Dustin. I don't know how late you can be here, but I have a million questions. So especially as the new guy, you've always been we always say that, I always say that whenever I'm on these shows, it's like listening to people in French, but the longer you go, the more that you start to learn the language, right? So yeah, let's touch on that first.
Yeah, so you can definitely, the moon is a pretty easy target. From our perspective, you have, let's say really deep space stuff, and even that could be broken into, we'd say deep space requires long focal length and then deep space wide field. Because certain targets like Andromeda, if you take Andromeda Galaxy, that's 6 full moons from our perspective wide in the night sky. So it's gigantic. So a short focal length scope like this, a fast, relatively low magnification system is going to give you that big field of view where you can get something like Andromeda, or as you saw, he had 2 gigantic nebulae in the same image, the Heart and Soul Nebula. And then he had the California Nebula, which is also very large. So all of these kind of show-stopping targets that people know, the Horsehead, Orion, Witch's Head, Pleiades, all this. So the Subaru logo, right? Even that, you can get all these really big targets very easily, and you can get them very quickly. Most scopes start at f7. This scope is f4.5. So your exposure times are essentially going to be cut in half, Ron. You're going to be doing relatively short exposures and seeing this stuff very bright. The moon is another target that is pretty big in the night sky. When you compare it to, look at what you see in a full moon compared to Jupiter, right? Jupiter would be a speck compared to a full moon. So Jupiter is going to be a real challenge at 250 millimeters of focal length. So it's not going to be great for live streaming planets, but for the moon, and then especially if you want to start live streaming deep space stuff, even some galaxies, you're going to be able to get away with that. Not just get away with it, but you're going to be able to do it extremely well and in high resolution. So it's going to perform for you.
That's awesome. And that's really kind of one of the reasons I bring up that question there. I mean, because there's a lot on here. So, I mean, there's a lot that he speaks about during this. I mean, one, look at that. It's beautiful. And I love the fact that it says that it's portable. It's a portable astrophotography telescope. It's not that big, and even someone else asked too. So Snyder says, is it Nikon compatible? You can pretty much, what I understand, pretty much like the whole point of it is to have the piece that you can add that piece and add any camera that you want to. Is that right?
Yeah. So Trevor's one of my best friends in the world. The guy is awesome. And so working on this project, he's not kidding. It did take 7 months. And it was because Trevor is extremely picky, and which is awesome. That's exactly
blame
how it
him.
should be. He wanted this to be turnkey, and so we had to calculate averages for everything to make sure that inside these adapters, even we have a place to put your filters. So if you want to shoot with a light pollution filter like the Triad filter, it's already included. But he wanted this to be a turnkey solution for people. So clicking on a camera is literally as simple as whatever camera. You have a Nikon, great. Buy a Nikon T-Ring for $5 and click it on, and we've already done the calculations. When you click that on, you click your camera on, you are at the correct back focus and ready to shoot. Same thing with Canon, Olympus, Fujifilm, everybody. Because the T-rings are already sectioned to bring it to 55 millimeters of back focus, there is no learning curve for people getting ready to, throw their camera on this and go.
So, I mean, again, there's a lot that's on here. So there was something that he said at the beginning that I don't know or understand, and I can't remember what it was he said. He said, if it doesn't have this thing, then I'm not going to do it. I think it's APO. It's a certain APO.
Yeah, it's
I think
an
you
APO,
mentioned.
so it's truly color corrected. Most scopes in this size use 2 elements instead of 3. And so think about the 3 colors, right? Red, green, blue. And the simplest way to think about it is it takes the number of lenses to bring that number of colors to focus at the same place. So with 2 lenses, you can pretty easily focus red and green together, but blue specifically, when you start getting into like the violet ranges, it won't bring that into focus together. So you get this color fringing, which is called chromatic aberration, color aberration. And so you'll see that everything you shoot, like if you take a picture of the moon, it'll have this purple ring around it because purple is going to be out of focus, whereas everything else is in. But with the 3rd element, you can bring all of those colors to focus together. But then on top of that, we still have to adjust for field curvature, because now you've corrected color. Now we need more elements in the back to flatten out the image. I mean, you think about it, you've got round elements, bringing light to a cone with a a round eye, where you're not going to be super picky about the corner. You're not going to see all of that curvature. But what happens when you flatten out a sensor? Because sensors aren't curved, you have to bring in additional elements to flatten out the field so that it can be completely flat across the field. And that's what this already has contained in it, is a field flattener and reducer to make the scope super fast. And like I said, you don't have to know any of this. Honestly, you just have to click your camera onto the back and go. But this is all the stuff that, we did on the front end to make sure that people were successful when this arrived. Right.
And
so,
I mean, that was kind of a big thing for me when I was looking at the camera that I got. I talked to you about a lot of stuff too. And I'm not saying I'm an expert on it, but I wanted to find something that I have, the camera that I currently have, that's the A6400, but also I was told was pretty solid for doing astrophotography. So I wanted something that would be great that for what I'm doing with live streaming, that looks professional, has a clean look to it, but could also do the other thing. I didn't want to have to buy a bunch of different cameras, and but I love that's kind of the setup. But portable. I mean, how small is this thing? I mean, it looks really tiny in comparison to.
About a can of tennis balls, right? Like that's
crazy.
Kind of the size, yeah. So a little bigger than like a can of Pringles. Like it's small. It's really, really small, and you see the image quality. It's phenomenal. But if you pull that image back up of it for a second, I can show you the extreme level of detail, and it's almost funny. So those rings, just the metal rings around the scope right there that you see, those black rings on the scope, that took 4.5 months to develop because of the insane level of attention to detail that goes into it. And so you see those rings wrapping around the scope, and every single thing about rings in general had to be redesigned for this project, because it was like when we're sitting down, we start really thinking, well, what are the things that can cause problems for people? It's like, well, cameras have cables, dew heaters have cables, all of this stuff. So we have to completely shave off the knob. It can't have any knob on it, anything that cables can get snagged on. So we developed that 2-stage locking collar that will allow the scope to rotate in the rings. And then also it has a rotator in the back so that you can frame your images, so that you can always make sure your cables are out of the way. And then we put slots inside the rings for all of your cables actually to run through, so that there's no chance of anything being hung up on them at all. And so they're tunable so that they hold there's no flexure at all, which means, if the telescope starts moving when you're imaging or flexing at all, then you're going to be, especially if you're guiding, you're going to have an issue where you're going to get star trails, or you can just kind of get like cone error in your images, different things. And so like even just something as simple as like, well, what's going to hold the rings onto the mount, or hold the telescope onto the mount? It was like 4.5 months of development just to get those metal brackets to where there was absolutely zero flex and no chance of anybody having even a simple problem as something as simple as a cable dragging across the scope, So it's really, it was a pretty wild and fun project to be a part of, but there's more attention to detail in this scope than anything I've seen.
This camera is as small as a bag of grapes, which is hysterical from Mac here. Okay, so is there anything else one of the things that you and I had talked about a while ago was the possibility. Oh wait, apparently
you're gone. You're gone.
I'm just gone. That's strange.
That
he's just out at night.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. So You said you used the you color correct for, or like to be able to focus all three colors. Was that not done before, and why not in like other telescopes? Like, why would they only focus on two colors? Is that just like it's a technical difficulty and they didn't want to deal with it, or it just seems like you would want to be able to focus like all three colors? So.
Well, I mean, there's not a whole lot of like astrophotography telescopes, right? I mean, developed directly for this. That was kind of the goal, correct, Dustin?
Yeah, so there aren't many that are designed specifically for astrophotography. I mean, there are a handful, but there aren't a ton. And usually, when they're done that way, they're very expensive, $5,000-$6,000, things like that, or more. You know, our plane wave scopes they go up into the $600,000 range and up. So it's like things can get expensive very quickly. But we wanted something that was accessible, and the reason companies don't do that is because it's very expensive for that third element. Like, you can produce doublets, which is just two elements, extremely inexpensively. I mean, you can get a telescope for $200, stuff like that. But when you start getting fully color corrected telescopes, they get expensive, and they get expensive fast. And then having to get, you know, the extra elements to make it perfect with a sensor where you have a flat field makes it even more expensive. And so you start climbing out of that price point very quickly. Then you start getting into all the fine tuning of like, well, we got to make sure that we have high transmission coatings and all of this other stuff. And that's where, you know, most of the time, especially with companies with limited buying power, have to start cutting some corners just to save the consumer, the end buyer, you know, from having a telescope that is going to be $4,000 or $5,000. They have to say, well, we have to sacrifice something. We didn't want to do that here. So what we did instead is we just went all in on this project, said, we're not going to cut any quarters. We're using the best of everything. We went through just about every glass manufacturer we could to find these optical sets. And with the product that we got, you know, we bought in high enough quantities to keep the cost. We really wanted to stay to that under $1,000 range, because we felt like anything beyond that really starts to push it out of the range of what's accessible for people that don't know whether or not they really want to do this. They're just getting into it, but there should be something there that kind of creates that access to the universe for people. So it had to be under $1,000, and that's how we got there.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I am so excited for this telescope, especially, you know, as Ron is interested in too, for outreach, you know, because if I'm in the field, you know, what I look forward to is having, I just started using an ASI Air and then an iOS device. So hypothetically with this telescope, you know, I can just bring the image up on the iPhone or an iPad and get these amazing galaxy images in color. I'm using a 294 MC Pro camera.
Nice.
And just show them live. And it blows people's minds because they don't know that these things are there right over their heads.
Nobody does. We're the first humans in all of human history to be able to share it in this way. So yeah, I mean, it's a wild experience that like we're going outside and I almost like, once you know, you almost feel obligated, because it's like, we know this thing that nobody's ever known, that you can go out and explore your own universe and nobody's seen this stuff, you know?
And you're talking about a camera that you can fit in your big pocket and take a picture of the Andromeda Galaxy in 60 seconds that will knock your socks off.
Exactly. Yeah, you're like, oh, yeah, it's the Whirlpool Galaxy, and people have no idea. But you're like, somebody's walking by, a stranger. It's just like, hey, you want to look 27 million years in the past? Come hang out for 30 seconds, right? Who has ever been able to say that? And even now, Ron, you're talking about like, hey, let's go take a high-res image of the moon, live stream it to everyone we know or don't know, and it's like, that's the same moon that every human that's ever existed on this planet has looked at. I mean, that's the one that Shakespeare was writing about. That's the one in all of your history books. That is the moon that's been a part of the human experience for as long as humans have been around. And here we are for the first time ever sharing it in this new way to a global audience, right? We're communicating this new message and perspective that almost technologically opens a door to a new part of ourselves and human connection universally. It's unreal.
And we've got a bunch of questions over in Twitch here, so let's kind of hit some of those. Did you say TensorCat wants to know? Did you say what kind of glass is in it? And can you share that with us?
Yeah, so the big thing, because I see Bill is asking the same question, I've had probably 400 people message me about that. And so the big thing is there are a lot of scopes in this size range. What I would say is this size range is 80 millimeters and under. When you start getting into 4-inch scopes, like 100 millimeter scopes, it gets into a completely different price point and honestly a completely different telescope. They're not portable in the way, like you said, this one is like throw it into your pocket and go. And that's really what it is. But what happens with a lot of them, and especially glass manufacturers, is, look, we dealt with everyone. I can tell you when we made our filter, even the glass for our filter, we talked to 45 different glass manufacturers. And it's not hard for anybody to produce a good something. What it's really hard for anyone to do is produce a good every time. And so that's one of the benefits we had linking this project to OPT, was that we already have a buying relationship with these companies. And it's one that we can use to leverage and to put a lot of pressure on the companies we're dealing with to make sure that the end user is getting the best of the best. And so what we do is we go to, each company, we say, here's the expectation. If at any point, because these will be tested, if at any point, any one of these specs is off, if transmission is off, if coatings are off, that is not our customer's problem, that's your problem. And it will 100% remain your problem. It's coming back to you. And that's part of this agreement. You don't want it, don't take it. But we will not accept the problem for our customer. And that's something that if it's, let's say it's like some of the doublets. And I don't want to mention any brands because I think each telescope exists. It made the cut because it serves somebody, whether it's price point related. There are cheaper telescopes out there. There are more expensive telescopes out there, but each telescope deserves, its due. It's made the cut for a reason. But what we did is the manufacturer we went to, we found their optical set. We were very impressed by it. We made some tweaks. The original optical set was a doublet. As Trevor mentioned, that wasn't going to work. So we went with a triplet with a reducer flattener, and then they offer different tiers of glass. And I hate getting into the spec war, because I think that it's misleading, and that's the opposite of what we're trying to do. And when I go to these forums and I look on like cloudy nights, it's everybody cycling bad information to each other. Like, oh, well, you need oil spaced, which is the exact wrong answer for imaging. So what you do is you have these different tiers. And so what we came up with was, here's our standard. Here's what it has to meet. Has to be perfect color correction. If it's not, it's going back. And we want the top tier glass that you manufacture. And so that's what it was. That's where it is. And what you get more than anything else is, one, that it is an actual triplet. So when we say APO can also be used as a marketing term, which doesn't really mean that it's a triplet. It means, hey, it's pretty color corrected. If you don't zoom into the pixels, you might not see it. Ours is truly apochromatic. So you can zoom in all day long. You're going to be happy. The other thing is the transmissions are extremely high. That's why his images look so depthy. You'll see a lot of telescopes that even when they are apochromatic, if the transmissions aren't high on the coatings, then you lose a lot of light. It's almost like having a sensor with bad quantum efficiency that just can't, even if light's hitting the sensor, it can't capture it. And so you get, with telescopes like that, you get a lot of reflections. And I know that there are some out there that are notorious for this. Those are all the things that make a project like this go from a 4-month project to a 7-month project, is just testing and beating it to death and making sure that the consistency and quality control is on a different level, even than the things they produce for themselves, right? So it has to be this standard. And if anything from that deviates, then it goes back.
So again, there's plenty of questions coming from the chat over here. Somebody's asking. TensorCat said, "Is there a possibility?" Well, they say them says hope they do a higher F ratio version. Is there going to be just one version of this? Or are there other things that you're working on? Different. I mean, I'm sure you're working on a million different telescopes. I'm not exactly sure what that means, other than the bits I've heard here and there. But is that something that you're looking at, or is that not for this telescope?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit on my end. I don't know if that was for everybody or just me. It might be just mine. Can you say that one more time?
Sure. Asked if there would possibly be a higher F ratio version of this telescope.
No, not for this one. We have other telescopes coming out. I mean, I've got a 2,000 millimeter focal length CDK. I've got a 3,500 millimeter focal length CDK. Both of those are F7 and F8. And so, we've got 24-inch telescopes that'll be rolling out. So we've got big telescopes with longer focal lengths. Focal ratio is, it's a relationship between aperture and focal length. And so when F ratio is the speed of the optics, but we try to keep our radian optics fast. I think that's part of it. And for us, it's not about specs. It's not about any of that. What it's about is the user experience and user success. And so that's why we take a very strict marketing path. I know it's almost like completely opposite from what the industry has done forever. I mean, if you look at our marketing, it's literally opposite of what the industry has done forever. Normally what you do is you grab a white paper and you say, read this spec sheet and go buy the product, and you can argue about the things that make zero difference, right? Great. And then your images, whatever. If you get them, great. If not, great. Ours is the exact opposite. It's about go get your images, share those images, explore the universe, and do exactly what we were talking about a minute ago, which is bring home that feeling of being one of the first to go out there, really see these things, and be able to connect with, a deeper part of yourself, knowing where it is you live, where you come from, but also being able to share that with the people around you. And so it's meant to be an exploration device that's simple to use and provides superior results to, the things that otherwise would be too complicated to use.
And we have a question from one of the people that's constantly doing live streams, and Bill Nash is great with what he does. And Dustin, if you've already answered this, I apologize, because again, I'm listening to you and also reading these comments because we can't see them. So we do an RTMP stream to Twitch, so I don't get to see these, so I'm reading through them. Bill Nash says, "What's different in the Raptors glass compared to other 61s? Is there anything that you haven't covered already?"
No, I mean, that's what I was just describing. That's the exact war that I was talking about with the marketing approach. So if there were 10 scopes released tomorrow, 9 of them would post a white paper and say, here's the focal length, here's the F ratio, here's the glass, here's the, the everything, just on and on and on. And then people would take images with them, and some would work, some wouldn't. And then you get a bad copy of one and other things. And it's like, all right, great. The only one that would probably be different in that is the radian scope, which is, hey, here's a simple to use telescope. We guarantee you won't get this wrong. And here's an image with it. Because ultimately that's what you're trying to do, right? If you want to know how good the glass is, look at the image. Break it apart. We invite you to, because I promise you, we already have. We were way harder on this than you're going to be. And you want to know if it's color corrected? Zoom in, look at the stars, break it apart, run it through your program, do it. We invite you to, but we're not joining that conversation because we're trying to empower a different one, right? And that's the whole idea. So the big difference, what I think Bill is asking is it a triplet or a doublet? I mean, that's the big difference between most of the 61s is they're marketed as Apo, but they're doublets. Ours is marketed as Apo because it's an Apo, it's a triplet. Doesn't mean doublets are bad. I think they come in at a phenomenal price point, but they are generally a scope used for versatility at a price point more than ours. Ours is not the most versatile scope in the world. You want a scope you can use for everything. There are better scopes than the one that we make. You want a scope for astrophotography. The radian scope is going to be a hell of a scope to try to beat. It's going to be a challenge to beat it.
So, I mean, people are out there and they're always looking for, I want my first scope, what am I looking for? And I think that's a lot for a lot of people. I mean, whenever we do outreach, I mean, even me, I'm not doing it on a huge scale, but I do certainly do it. And people want those pictures. They want the picture of the moon, or they want to see, Jupiter, or they want to see the solar or lunar eclipse. They always want these things. This is going to take it to a different level. And somebody actually mentioned it in chat on Clear Skies, where they said, imagine bringing these things to the people of the planet that the mainstreams don't show. And that's from Comic Girl 2222, SciComm. And it's also the same thing that our friend Mac McCowie mentioned earlier. He wants to talk about taking this to places so he works a lot in the Arab world. So the Arabic countries, so like Jordan, Syria, and so on. This is something we can put in a backpack whenever we go to IAC next year, that we can hop over and have this part of this, And the first time that people are going to really look out at the cosmos, there's this piece of equipment that's in their back, that in a backpack or in a small suitcase that we have, where they're going to be able to show them the universe, and they're like, I can't believe I'm looking at this. Like, this is really what's out there. And I think that's one of the big reasons why this is such an important scope, because it's small, it's portable. I mean, $1,000 in that world is going to be too much, but we have people like Mac who are going to say, I'm not saying this for sure or anything. Sorry, Mac, not trying to say that this is what you're exactly going to do, but that he might want to take a group of these and say, I want to take these to these parts of the world and set them up so that way they can look through this with something small. All you need is this to be able to look out at the deep universe and see your place in it. And I think it's something that you take this to the Maasai tribe in Africa. You take this to Nepal, where I've seen my friends, and I can put this in a backpack and I can go do the Everest Space Camp trek again. And every time we stop for a night, I can set this up and show them the deep sky, a place where there's nothing like this. They barely have Wi-Fi, and you can do this. And I think that's the biggest game changer about this, is that it's that lives. Small. Yeah.
It'll change people's lives. I mean, it changed mine. Most of the people at OPT that we talk, we have similar stories. It's like once you get it in your blood, it's hard to get it out. It really is. So I think that's what it's about, and we have to keep finding ways to make it more and more accessible. So this was a great step in that direction, but again, it's the first telescope that Radian has released. We have a lot of plans, and that's what the brand is about, and it's taking a different approach. I know that's going to rub some people the wrong way, but I think all in all, everything good does, right? And so I think it's all in all, it's going to show a lot of people the universe around them, and it's going to be, and that conversation is one that is always unifying. I never see it be divisive. So I think it's a great thing. I think it's a step in the right direction.
I love it. So we're going to wrap up. Mel, we're going to go to you first because I know you got to go. So any final thoughts for tonight? Thank you so much for joining us, coming out, hanging out. We loved having you on and talking about all the cool things that you do, anywhere that people can follow you on social media, all that stuff, as well as your final thoughts tonight.
My final thought is, I have no idea how you managed to build that in 7 months. That sounds too short for me, actually. From what you just said, that sounds like an awesome feat right there. Because, I mean, I know a rocket is a different scale, but that sounds like it should have taken a lot longer. So props to you for that one.
Yeah, I think rockets are a little more complex, just a little more complex than.
Sometimes they can make them too complex. I feel you can dumb them down sometimes a little bit more, but that's a different topic. No, thanks, Ron, for having me on. It was a lot of fun. That was a really, really good last minute decision I made here. I loved it. Thank you so much. I think my Instagram thingy is blended in. You can see it there. I haven't been very active on it, and that's mostly due to the whole world burning, or I guess the United States most of the time burning, and the whole pandemic thing. So I've been a little distracted with that and not as active, but I plan to come back pretty soon. This was great. This gave me a little bit of a motivation to come back to my my virtual life again. I've mostly just been hiking and being out and camping on beaches and mountaintops. So it's nice to somewhat come back a little bit again. So yeah, thank you so much. I do have to sleep because I have to get up for a 5 a.m. hike. So.
Well, go get some rest. We appreciate you being on here. I'll bow you out now. And John, we're going to go to you next as I let her leave. Obviously, there's a bunch of things that you have going on. I'm sure that the telescope stuff was a big thing for you as well. But tell us where people can follow you, the cool stuff you're doing with your new YouTube series. You've been kind of a full-time YouTuber to take the stuff from your books and the activity book that I have near me here and putting that out there. And I think that there might be something too, man. I mean, you should sign up for OPT Telescope's affiliate program so that way it's something you can add to the books. Like if you want to get it, here's a recommendation. Maybe the new versions to be like, here's some stuff that you can get from that. I think that this works perfectly. And I don't think that you and Dustin have had too much time to talk about that. So fill Dustin in on a little bit on what it is that you do, the books that you write, because he wasn't here earlier for that.
Yeah, well, I mean, first I'd have to say that, Trevor and Astro Backyard has been a huge inspiration to me, and I follow everything that guy does, because as I move out of sort of the academic side of astrophysics and dive into the amateur world all over again anew, and diving into astrophotography, it's just been great to have, such role models as Trevor, and it's just so awesome that you guys are there showing how it's done. And so people like me who are new to the astrophotography side of stuff and can now translate it to outreach to help other people, the resources are there and they're so good. Yeah, so I guess there's that. Yeah, Ron, you had something else oh, the books.
Yeah. Well, I mean, your books and what you do, and the things that you put out there, again, because it's 50 small things to see, or 50 things to see in a small telescope, and then here's the stuff you can see on the moon. A lot of this is driving people to astronomy to say, get a smaller telescope. Here's what you can do. Here's what you can see, and that's a big part of outreach as well.
So my target market was people that get the telescope for Christmas and don't know what to do with it. So those are the people I was sort of rescuing from having that telescope go in the closet forever, get them into the hobby, and then they'll get their next telescope, and then move on from there. But yeah, so the book 50 Things to See with a Telescope, is really for the person who just needs to get up to speed, and it gets them up to speed so fast, because you can open up to any page, and you'll see something cool, and you'll be able to go out and see something cool in the night sky right away. So the books are organized by season, about 10 pages per season. So you're going to open up the summer. If you open it up in one of the summer pages, you're going to be able to go out and see something, without issue, like M8, super bright, nebula, M22, globular cluster in the south. You've got M13 overhead. Like this, if you've got a book and M13 is the only target on that page, and you've got a couple reference constellations, you're going to be able to find it. And sort of my books, just that's what they do. They help you find success, without the stress, and with the tools you have on hand. So even if you've got binoculars, you can find the Andromeda Galaxy. You can find some of these bright globular clusters. You can find these bright nebula. And so that's the niche that my books fill. And in the future, I'd love to write books that go beyond that. So I've written a book for mid-sized telescope owners, just targets to find. And someday I'll branch out into new things. I've actually reached out to Trevor. I haven't heard back from him about partnering on an astrophotography book from a processing standpoint, because that's been my expertise, is getting these books published, and to a lot of people. And so that's sort of what I'm up to.
Yeah, that's impressive stuff, and I agree. Having something there to amplify the experience is so important, because it can be overwhelming. It is overwhelming, even after you've been doing it forever. It's overwhelming. So it's really cool that you're providing a path to success for people and really trying to look out for them before they need your help. I think that's really great. And I can't speak for Trevor. He's one of the busiest guys I know.
I bet.
But it sounds like a great idea, and I can't believe that it would be out of, not in alignment with the kind of things that are going on there. So, maybe send another message. But I think it's really, really great. In any way that we can help, or I can help, reach out. I'm happy to help anytime. And this is the stuff we live for, is trying to make people successful in not just the hobby, but in gaining and sharing this perspective. So if there's anything OPT or even myself personally can do, let me know. I'm happy to share your stuff on my personal social media on Gibson Picks, and just to let people know that exists, because I agree, having that with them when they start to explore is going to lead to a better journey for them.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not sure if Dustin, you heard. So I decided to do an experiment and become a full-time YouTuber for 90 days. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of a wild experiment. So I'm at about video 30 right now, and only about 17, I think, so far have been released. I'm releasing every 3 days. But in the upcoming videos, you'll have videos like Christmas is coming. Let's choose that first telescope. If you're on a budget, that entry level telescope, not for astrophotography, but just for visual, for backyard observing. I've got videos on how to use binoculars to explore the night sky. And then the first 21 videos are no telescope at all. So it's just learning the constellations, the important stars, learning about what it means to have dark skies, how to use astronomy software, all that stuff that you can do, starting now, even if you don't have any equipment. And so that's all at Learn to Stargaze on YouTube. And so again, every 3 days there'll be a new video, right, until for another couple of months. So
yeah, that's awesome, man. I wish you luck with the entire thing, and reach out to me, Dustin@optcorp.com, if I can be of any assistance or just help you, kind of find the pathways that I've seen be successful for people. We can always jump on the phone and, just kind of go through some of it. So let me know if I can help. Happy to. We need more of that stuff out there and good information existing. So I'm all in if I can help.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's talk.
Cool.
All right, thank you so much, John. I'll bout you out now so that way you can get some sleep, because I know it's late for you. I think it's like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. So appreciate you being on here, man. And Dustin, we're looking at 2 months with this show here and the channel. You giving this channel, the new channel, and the opportunity for so many people to be science communicators and talk about so many different things. So as we wrap up, we only got about 7 minutes left. Anything that you want to share with folks, as this channel is built, it's been building, and all the shows that are out there that people can watch, where people can follow you and see the live streams that you do, and everything that, some hints at some other stuff. Everybody's excited in the Twitch stream. They're interested about the next telescopes and what's coming up next. So if you want to give them some ideas as we finish up tonight.
Sure. Yeah. So the first thing I want to say before we talk about products or anything else, there's always something new coming out, and we are so excited. I can tell you that there have never been so many things for us in the works at one time in our 75-year history. It's a big deal. It's a huge part of our focus, and we are extremely excited. We think we're going to make a lot of people successful in this. But before digging into kind of the specifics there, I do want to say that, Ron, what you're doing is awesome, man. I think you're setting the bar for everyone. I really do. I think that, I talk about you and Scott Roberts both just being juggernauts in this thing. And I know personally how taxing it can be when there's always a next thing. Especially streaming. Streaming takes a lot out of you. It's the thing that nobody talks about on stream because you don't want to be a Debbie Downer, but it takes a lot out of you being on.
3 hours, multiple nights a week is a lot. Yeah. And even if I adore this, I love this, but there's a lot to it. And there's a really cool person that's talking about it now. Comment Girl 2222 was saying, like, what about, is there certain links? Is there certain things that we can get out to find these people? And when you have 10 people on a stream trying to keep up with all their different their websites and their information, their social media, there's a lot to that. And we appreciate that people always ask about that, but it's a lot to host it and produce it and do all those things at the same time. And it's what so many people do, and they're incredible at it. Like Skylius and so many of our friends that we love. That 10-minute video, 8-9 minute video from Trevor probably took him the same 7 months to produce.
Yeah, exactly. It takes a very long time. And I think that's it, is that, you have to be on, and I'm talking about you specifically, but also be the one working behind the scenes. So, more than anything, man, I just want to say thank you for what you're doing, because I know, from our conversations, the things that people don't get to hear, because it's just us one-on-one when we're talking off camera. This guy is busting his ass all the time to bring content that he does not have to do for people often that he does not know. And I think that, man, it's inspiring. I think you're not just inspiring myself. I know you're inspiring a lot of our team, and people talk about it. And, I think it's important to give you credit for everything you're doing, and more so for the reasons you're doing it. I love it. And, I want you to continue to do it. But a huge thank you to you for everything you're providing to the community.
Thank you, man. So you want to give another quick shout out? We're going to end with your stuff and a final goodbye. And I want to play that video because I talked about it earlier of the telescopes that are out in the middle of the desert that you all created a while back. And I've still actually got it saved from the birthday show from a while back. So we'll end with that. But yeah, let everybody know where they can find you and some of the stuff that's coming up next.
Sure. Yeah. I guess I should have been cool too and put Dustin Gibson and at Gibson Picks, but I didn't. So that's how you can find me on social media. If you have questions or anything I can answer, I try to be available on there as much as possible. So please reach out. I do answer the direct messages. Sometimes it takes me a little while to get to them. You can also find me at dustin@optcorp.com. And then, of course, most of the stuff we do, and if you really want updates, that all goes through OPT. So the OPT email list is where all the news comes out first. And then OPT social media. So OPT Telescopes on Facebook and, on Instagram, it's OPT Corp. And yeah, it's a big conversation going on there all the time too. So join the conversation, have fun, talk about telescopes, talk about space with us. That's what we do. And it's a good conversation. We have a blast there. So yeah, come hang out with us.
Love it, love it. Thank you, everybody. This was an hour longer than we normally do, and that's one of the cool things about this, that we have the freedom to really take these conversations and roll with them and have some really fun times. We appreciate everyone coming on and joining us as they always do. We've had, if we go through the last just 2 months of this show, we've seen upwards of thousands of people watching it, individual viewers. That's the cool part about Twitch, is that we see it. That's just from my show. I tried to get onto some of the other folks' shows, their shows every night of the week. There's the Space Junk podcast. There's so much going on. So make sure you follow, make sure you subscribe. If you're watching not on Twitch, it's twitch.tv/Clear Skies Network all together. Check out what's going on. And thank you all so much for joining us and checking out what we do. And as we wrap up tonight, we're going to play the video from the scopes out in the middle of nowhere in the desert and with some really gorgeous skies. Thank you all so much for joining us, and we'll see you all soon. Next Saturday, 8 p.m. Mountain Time.
Hey, what's up, guys? We're in Landers, California, in my observatory. Give you guys a quick gear rundown and show you what I'm using. This is a software bisque ME2 mount with over a 200-pound capacity, which is necessary with a scope like this. You can even see all the counterweight that goes on the other side to balance this thing. But this is my long focal length scope. This is what I use to shoot most of the galaxy images that I post. This is a 17-inch plane wave CDK with a quartz mirror, about 3,000 millimeters of focal length, so really reaches out there. And compare that to what you see on the side of like a football field with a 70 to 200 big photographer lenses. This is 3,000 millimeters, so it really reaches out there. On the back side, you can see the camera here. This is an SBIG 16803. Use it, it's a really big sensor, but more importantly, has really big pixels, which you have to have on a focal length this long to really get the images that we're looking without making the stars super bloated. So that's what this one does. And then on the underside, I've got an off-axis guider here, and this is a guide camera. So once the imaging starts, this camera takes control of the mount, and if anything happens, the wind blows or something bumps it, that will take control of the system and move it back so that everything is always sharp and you don't see star trails in the image. This is the Planewave IRF 90 focuser. So it not only focuses the camera, but also rotates the camera to make sure that whatever the framing is you have for the artistic aspect of the image, you can get that in there and actually frame the image the way you want it. This pier here is a 4-foot pier, and it's on a ton of concrete, as you can see, and the concrete is actually isolated from the rest of the building, so it's separate, so nothing is actually touching that. That way, moving around in the observatory doesn't move the telescope, doesn't shake anything. Once the skies get dark, I pop open the roof. Telescope stands up, and you can see this thing is pretty substantial. But then from there, can take control over it. Yeah, guys, so we run this thing every night that's clear, so you can come check it out, twitch.tv/Gibson Picks, and see this thing in action, images rolling in live, and really just explore the universe with us. Come check it out.
Once again, thank you everybody so much for joining us. We'll see you next week, 8 p.m. Mountain Time, and y'all be good.